Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, I know I'm usually always excited for podcasting, but I'm especially excited today. And if you're watching this episode, you know why. We're in a new setup in our studio. We previewed it. We kind of teased it last week, but here we are. It's way more official, Cody. I'm very excited to be debuting this new design.
Yeah, it looks amazing. I love the wood in the background, the emblem, all of that. I miss our chairs and our little table a little bit. A lot of memories.
A lot of memories.
Yeah, using that setup. But overall, yeah, no, I love it. It's amazing. I think it looks so cool. The table background looks official. It looks like we know what we're doing now. We look like professionals.
I mean, we hope to give that vibe.
We still are in the dungeon a little bit. We're down below Heritage in the old, I think the weight room used to be here. But no, overall, it's amazing. My only, not complaint, but I'm still kind of figuring out how to sit. And when I go on my rants, I don't want to lean too far this way or get going a little bit. But overall, I love it. I think it's awesome. And again, they did an amazing job with this setup. It looks so cool.
Shouts to Juan and Rob again. Yeah. They did huge effort cleaning, putting all this up. Just a lot of effort and labor of love for sure. And we're actually debuting what this looks like. They don't even. I felt bad. I was like, you guys made this. You should debut it in your own content. But we get first dibs. So excited to show off all their hard work. So thanks again to them.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not complaining that we get to show it off first because I think our viewers, obviously, if you're listening in the car or anything, but if you're watching on YouTube, I think you're going to appreciate how cool it looks. So
for
again,
sure.
Shout out to them. They did an amazing job.
And I guess I'm excited for another reason, Cody. We have a little bit of announcement, or I should say you have an announcement. You are coming on full time for USC in a broadcasting role. I'm very excited for you. Do you want to tell the people what's happening this season?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think we talked briefly about it last week.
At the end of the episode, yeah.
But yeah, so now I'm going to be doing pretty much everything as the offensive analyst on Trojans Live, Trojans Tailgate. I'm going to do home and away games as well for the tailgate show. So we'll be doing the away games in studio at ESPN LA. So that'll be awesome. Yeah. I'm also going to be doing, and we do the roundtable, which is a part of Trojans Live. Continue to do the podcast. So we signed on for a whole bunch of episodes for that. So that's awesome. But now, a little unfortunate. I'm going to miss them, but
it's a bittersweet moment.
I'm going to be doing now the post-game episode or the recap episodes on Sunday, which you and Dion previously did.
Yeah.
Dion, though, obviously he's father of 3 now.
Yes.
He's coaching high school football, which is amazing. I think he's going to be
really
a phenomenal
excited for
coach.
Coach Dion.
I saw his kids were playing soccer a little bit too, and for those of you who don't know, his wife Autumn was a great soccer player here at USC, so I know she's excited. Well. But a little bittersweet because Dion's going to be leaving us. But yeah, so I'll be doing the preview episode and now the post-game recap episode, which will hopefully shorten our episodes a little bit.
Yeah, efficiency is the goal. Obviously, we love podcasting and we love creating as much content as possible, but we want to make sure it's consumable. With 2 episodes a week, we want to make sure you get the information that you want and can do it in a nice fashion. I know some people are like, oh, I run to this episode, which first of all sounds like my own personal torture, but sometimes you want the longer episodes, and I'm sure we will go long anyway, but this is to make sure that, we have some continuity. Cody, we can get you on and get your thoughts and see what you previewed and does it match up, rather than having to do that on Wednesday and preview at the same time.
Yeah, and that's kind of piggybacking off of that point. Was the problem was our preview episodes that we recorded on Tuesday or Wednesday, the first hour of those
we're getting your thoughts on the last game.
Yeah, well, because there were so many questions about it.
It's just like context.
And it led into that next episode because, or that next point we were making. Hey, our defense did this, and this last week. We need to fix that because our opponent's going to do X, Y, Z. So it kind of worked hand in hand. But now, like you said, hopefully it's going to kind of settle everything down. The recap episode will be exactly that. We're going to talk about what happened, offense, defense, break down everything, special teams, and then the preview episode will be about the opponent. Yeah. Maybe touch a little bit on, hey, we can fix what we did last week here going forward, but it will not be the first hour is a preview after you and Dion recap. And then the second hour is preview, and then the next hour is questions, and then we're at 3 hours and people are falling asleep. So,
exactly.
Yeah, but either way, I'm very excited again doing all of offensive analysts. Yeah, it's exciting. So I hope you guys enjoy listening to me because I'm going to be around a lot this year.
More Cody this season.
But again, this is kind of what I say at the end, but I love being back around USC football. So it was awesome. And me and my wife were so excited and we're close to here. So this is always going to be home for me. And being a part of USC football, and not only as a player, but now as in the media side of things, has been amazing. And I love it. So I'm excited for this year, and what better year to do it going into the Big Ten. And a lot of expectations this season.
Yeah, no, I think I speak for all of our listeners when we say we're very thankful that you're on this show and for all your contributions. But I also want to touch on something you said earlier, too. I just want to give a thank you to Dion for 2 years. You know, he had a child every season that he was on the show, just so dedicated to the podcast. I told him he's always part of the show. If there's a burning, you know, point that he wants to make, he can hop on, contribute. So he's definitely part of the show. It's just we're changing the lineup there. But again, big thank you to Dion on that front. Now let's get into this episode. We are breaking down USC's roster. It's kind of, you mentioned this, Cody, at the beginning. It's a preview of USC. Next week we'll have the preview of LSU, but it's kind of self-scouting, if you will, today.
Yeah, and I'm going to say the famous jinx. Hopefully it's a shorter episode.
We can knock on wood now on this table.
But no, really, this is basically going to be, obviously the depth chart is coming out next week, most likely. That's game week, and you have to reveal that, I think, by Wednesday.
Wednesday night, I believe, is when it's going to debut.
But overall, I mean, this is just going to be, obviously we know some positions there's going to be starters, guys that are returners, guys that we expect to be playing a lot. But to give you a little bit of a background on some of the guys that maybe are rotational players that aren't standout players, maybe some freshmen that may make an impact, or transfer guys that you haven't heard a lot about or don't know a lot about, and position groups you maybe don't know a lot about. So we're going to try to keep it more focused on kind of what that room looks like specifically by position, and that's about it. And then get the questions, and then we're done. So this is more of an informational episode, I guess, if you will. And again, I'm going to try to keep my talking to a minimum. And especially, I think it'll be easier, too, because we don't have a depth chart. So we don't have to speculate a lot, because in about 6 days' time or 7 days' time from now, we're going to know who the starters are, and we can really dive into that for the LSU preview.
For sure, and we will be recording on a Thursday next week. We have an extra day because the game is on Sunday, so we'll have the depth chart out by then when we record. So if there's anything crazy news or anything from the Too Deep, we'll be sure to address it in next week's episode. So we'll get you covered. This is kind of what happens in this era of the transfer portal, Cody. We kind of have to do a team preview, or our own team preview, before we get into anything else this season.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what college football is in today's era. Like you said, it's not, oh, this guy's been here for 3 years, it's his time to shine. We do have some players like that, especially our quarterback.
We're about to get into that.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. But overall, there's a lot of first-year players here that are going to not only be starters, but play a ton this season. So we're going to have to kind of give you a little background on them. If you don't know already, we did do a transfer portal episode, I think, in this off season about kind of what guys to expect. But then there was a whole nother wave in the fall that we didn't talk about. So, we're going to give you just a full, basically everything you need to know about this football team when it comes to a player standpoint in this episode. And then moving forward, we can start previewing where, I guess, guys are falling into place and where the starters, or the ABCs as they like to call them, on this team, and what to expect.
Alrighty, just 2 reminders before we jump into it. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. You can also watch this episode on the USC Athletics YouTube channel. And if you ever want to get your voice heard, be sure to look out for a tweet or a question box either on Twitter or Instagram. Our socials are VictoryPodUSC. Alrighty, Cody, let's jump into it. Let's start with USC's offense first. And I think we should start with the news of the week. USC announced its starting quarterback on Monday. I do have to give you props, Cody. We got a question last week kind of predicting when head coach Lincoln Riley was going to announce who the starter is. And you gave a sense of, and it kind of needs to be mock game week so that person can get control of the team and kind of know what they're heading into for mock game week. And you were right. Announced on Monday, Miller Moss is USC's QB1. So congrats to Miller. Long time coming for him. But just curious your thoughts there, Cody. And I just wanted to give you props on your prediction there.
Yeah. It's just, it makes the most sense, right? This week, the mock game week, you treat it like you're playing LSU. And for those of you who didn't listen last week, what you do is basically the last week of camp before you get into prep, is you treat it like a mock game. Like we would go with Sark, we would stay in the hotel on Friday night. Saturday, we were playing Fresno State or whoever it was that year. We were playing, I think our first game senior year was Arkansas State. And we'd come to the hotel, we'd stay in the hotel, do the meetings, wake up, and then we would go to the stadium, and we would have the scout team go in the away locker room, and they're talking trash and pushing you and trying to get you to bite. And we would stay in our locker room, and then we would treat it like an actual game. But it's tough to do mock game week when you don't know who your starting quarterback is, because you're still rotating, right? You can get away with that in the spring game. You can get away with that throughout fall camp. It's hard to get away with that when you go into your mock game preparation week before you go and do the real thing, the following week. So, again, huge shout out to Miller. And I'm going to start with Jaden and Jake Jensen real quick, and then I'll talk about Miller in a second. But a huge shout out to Jaden Maeva and Jake Jensen. I mean, this obviously Miller deserves this 100%. But I truly believe Jaden and Jake made Miller better, and it really forced him to earn this starting position. I'm so excited for the quarterback room that we have right now. But again, huge shout out to Jaden. I really believe, like I said, he pushed Miller to get better. He forced Miller to be better because, as Lincoln had mentioned, throughout not only spring camp, but through fall and the summer, Jaden started to catch up a little bit, right? And it became
said it was close.
It was a very even quarterback position. And that's why I said last week, it's a good feeling as a coach when you know you have two guys that are capable of being a starter and you throw Jake Jensen in there, who is, I think, going to be very important to this quarterback room as well. But that's a great feeling as not only a play caller, but a head coach, to know that you have two guys capable of leading your football team. But again, I think Jaden has a very bright future. Mm-hmm. I know there's some guys coming here. There's going to be a lot of competition. There's some big names. There's going to be transfer portal. All these things happen, and I hope and pray that he stays here and he gets a chance to continue to develop under Lincoln Riley. But again, you got to stay ready, right? This year, and really with at any level, you're one play away. Knock on wood, I hope Miller's healthy and he has a great season and everything goes successful, but you never know as a backup, and I'm speaking from experience, and any sport really that you play, you are always one play away, one freak accident away, one thing from happening to where you are the guy and you have to be the starter. So you really have to stay locked in. I'm not worried about it by what Lincoln has said about Jaden's preparation and the way that he's really picked up this offense and taken that next step. I know he's going to prepare like the starter and he's going to be ready to go if he's ever called upon. But overall, I just got to give a shout out to Jaden and Jake for really competing in that quarterback room and making it a true battle. A lot of people thought, hey, Miller deserves it. He played well in the bowl game. It's his job. Give it to him. But no, Lincoln Riley being the coach he is and the standard that he's set here at USC, you've got to earn that spot. And it doesn't just end right now, right? This isn't, okay, the battle's over. It's going to go on throughout the entire year. And that's how it was when I was here at USC. You're competing every single week to prove you're the guy. And now you're not really competing against guys in the room anymore, but you're competing against the rest of the country, and you're leading your team on Saturdays or Sundays for the first game. But yeah, huge shout out to Miller, but I had to give Jaden and Jake their flowers as well. But now, going to Miller, and you get emotional, I guess, because I relate to the position. I relate
1,000%.
to going through multiple quarterback battles. I relate to staying here when you're a third-string quarterback, when you go to the bottom of the depth chart, when you don't really know what your future is going to look like. But I got to just say, and I'm speaking to Miller directly, and I think I speak for the entire, and I get the chills talking about it already, but I think I speak for the entire Trojan family and everyone that bleeds Cardinal and gold, and especially here at the Victory Pod. I mean, we've been Miller fans for a while now, but we're just so excited for him. I can't wait to see what he's going to do with this opportunity. I know he's going to make the most of it. But just to give you a little background on why it means so much, not only to Miller, but us as Trojan fans, didn't play in 2020, right, in high school as a senior because of COVID. He comes here in 2021, enrolls at USC in a time when there was a lot of question marks with everything going on with the program. USC goes 4-8 that year. He loses the head coach, the coaching staff that he committed to. He could have left, but no, he stayed because he wanted to be a USC Trojan. Then that offseason, USC hires Lincoln Riley. Shortly after that, Caleb Williams decides he's going to transfer and come with Lincoln, presumably to be the starting quarterback, and Miller now knows, I can compete, but most likely I'm going to be a backup. He could have left. Yep. But no, he stayed because he wanted to be a USC Trojan. Then 2022 happens, right? USC comes out of nowhere. Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, Heisman Trophy winner. Miller plays a little bit, an amazing backup, comes in and does some things very well. And at the end of that year, he knew that Caleb would have to come back for another season, but he played so well in the games that he did get some playing time, he could have left and went, and I'm sure he got NIL offers. I'm sure he got transfer offers to go be a starter elsewhere. But no, he stayed because he wanted to be a USC Trojan. And then you fast forward to the end of the season last year. Things don't go as well as they wanted to. The season comes up a little bit short of expectations. Caleb Williams is going to be number 1 overall pick, doesn't want to get hurt in the bowl game, rightfully so. A lot of starters sit out, and his teammates look at him and go, Miller, we need you now. We need you for this bowl game. This is your chance. There's a lot of transfer quarterback talk. There's a lot of things going on. Outside noise. Miller ignores all that. Goes out, sets a bowl game record, throws 6 touchdowns, throws a pick, bounce right back. Yeah. We saw everything we wanted to see from him in that football game and leads his team to a victory. And the emotion afterwards with him hugging Caleb, and you just see him kind of break down when it sets in, what was amazing. Well, then that season ends, right? And he kind of pushed everybody away. The guys that wanted to transfer here, there was a lot of talk. We didn't know for sure if that was going to happen, but everyone said, whoa. I think that's the guy. We do end up going and getting a younger quarterback in Jaden Maeva, which we needed to add some depth here. And Miller says, all right, here we go again. I'm in another quarterback battle, right? I did everything I could up to this point, but I've got to compete again and go earn it. I'm not going to run away. I'm not going to go somewhere else. I want to be a USC Trojan. I'm going to stay and compete. And now finally, after all that time, Miller, you are the starting quarterback at the University of Southern California. I know that means so much to him. I know. And it's just, I get a little emotional talking about it because I've been in that position and how much it means and how much hard work and dedication goes into that. But I'm just so excited for him, and I just know that he's going to make the most of his opportunity. And I've seen pictures of him with a 7 jersey on as a kid and growing up a Trojan fan. But he is the type of player that you want on your program. And I know guys transfer for different reasons. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But when you have a guy that sticks through the tough times and now gets his opportunity, it's easy to root for, right? So I just want to say, Miller, go out there and compete. We're all riding with you, number 7. All Trojan family has your back. I know he's going to go out there and make the most of it, and I'm excited. I can't wait. It's Miller time, and we've been waiting for it, but now it's officially Miller Moss is QB1 of USC. So I'm excited for him, and I can't wait to see what he does this year.
That was incredible. I don't know what else to say. Like, where do I go from there? But I do want to add some of Riley's comments. He said, like you mentioned, Miller handled the competition really well. He said that both Miller improved, but he said Jaden improved drastically, and he said, which we all expected. He said major jump for him. Really proud of how he handled the competition. So it was closer, I think, than we maybe thought it was based on, we didn't see much, but the way that Riley talked about it made it sound like it was way closer than I think we anticipated.
Well, I think for me, when the decision wasn't made in spring, I thought 2 things. Either A, Lincoln knows, but he's going to let him keep competing and obviously bring the best out of each other and going into fall camp. Or B, this is a lot closer than people think, and Jaden's catching up to Miller. And I think that's what happened. So, again, huge credit to Miller for fighting off Jaden and Jake, but also huge credit to Jaden, like I said earlier, for taking that next step and really taking it serious. It's so important in today's era to have a great quarterback room and especially a great backup. Now, you have to feel comfortable if something, again, knock on whatever happens to Miller or anybody on this team, you want to have your 2s be just as good as your starters or have the capability to come in and win football games. And we're fortunate enough to have that here at USC in the quarterback room.
Yeah, Riley said as much when he was asked about, like, God forbid anything happened to Miller. Are you confident in Jaden? He said 1,000%.
100%.
Also, it was interesting hearing Miller's mindset after the news. We got to talk to him on Tuesday about it. He basically was like, obviously this is a great milestone, a great accomplishment, but he was basically like, I got to win games.
Yeah.
Like, this is just the beginning.
Exactly.
Which is what you want. You don't want to get caught up in, it obviously is an honor to be named a starting quarterback at USC, but you still got to do stuff. You know what I mean?
And for some people, that's a great point. I'm glad he said that. It can feel like, especially when it's a 3-4 year position battle until you get that starting spot, it can feel like the finish line instead of the beginning. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to have that. And I know Miller has a great mindset, so he's not going to think like that. But, yeah, this is not the end. This is just the beginning, and now it's his turn to go out there and leave his legacy here at USC as a starting quarterback.
Well, I want to move on to our next position group, which is running backs. Part of the reason why is because we actually got clarity on the starter at that position group as well. Riley talked about it a little bit in depth on Tuesday. We got clarification that Woody Marks is the starter, and then Quentin Joyner is the second running back in line. It made it sound like, based on what Riley said, it sounded like Woody and Quentin are 1A, 1B.
Okay.
And then there's kind of a little bit of a gap, and there's Amarion Peterson and Brian Jackson, who was a spring enrollee and is a true freshman. But going back to Woody Marks, I think Riley was pretty complimentary of his duality. Like, not only does he have experience and knowledge being a redshirt senior, but he's obviously a running back, but he's a pass catcher too. We talked about that convoluted stat last week, Cody, but he is a great weapon for a Lincoln Riley offense where he utilizes his backs in multiple ways, not just running the ball.
Yeah, huge shout out to Woody for coming in and earning that starting spot. And I think he's one of the most dynamic backs in the entire country. And kind of back up your point, as a pass catcher, he has 1,225 yards and 5 touchdowns. And as a running back, when he's carrying the football, 1,883 yards and 22 touchdowns. He has over 600 touches out of the backfield in his time in college. So I'm excited to see what he can do in Lincoln Riley's offense. I think he's going to be used a ton. He's a type of back that you want as a starter because he's an every down back, right? We may not see him a ton on third and short, but that's when you kind of add in Joyner and Peterson a little bit. But first and second down, third and medium, obvious passing situations as well. He's another weapon. And as a quarterback, you love that because it's almost like you have a fifth receiver on the field, and it makes it very tough for a middle linebacker and man to cover a running back out of the backfield. So I'm excited to see what Marks can do. Quentin Joyner as well.
Yeah,
I think he's going to make a big impact. He looked great.
He came on in the last bit of last season.
Yeah, and he played well in the bowl game. We saw a couple big-time runs from him in the spring game as well. I think he's going to make more of an impact than people think this year, coming into his second year. But also, don't want to discount Amarion Peterson and Brian Jackson, 2 guys that are younger. I think are going to be good rotational guys that will get some opportunities. And if we know anything about Lincoln's offense, you are going to see at times that third, fourth, and sometimes fifth running back
come
into the game. Yeah, and have to make some plays. So, again, very solid running back room, but shout out to Woody Marks. Excited to see what he can do as a starter.
For sure. And Riley said as much. He said, we feel like we have 4 contributors, and if history's any indication, we're going to use all of them at some point. So that's, again, a position group where you're going to get a lot of rotation either way throughout the entire long season. So we'll see there. Speaking of rotation, I'm going to try and make a transition to wide receivers. I feel like this is an area where USC is taking a step forward talent-wise. If the Holiday Bowl was any indication, I'm curious your scouting report on USC's wide receivers.
Yeah, this is, and another point back to Lincoln Riley's offense, you're going to see a lot of these guys on the field this year, and we saw it the last 2-3 years that Lincoln's been here about how many different receivers he'll use and how many times he'll move those guys around and create one-on-one advantages, create mismatch for opposing defenses, and it's just so much fun to watch. But we have a lot of breakout players this year. We have a very, very talented wide receiver room, but not a lot of stats and guys that haven't had a ton of playing time in this position group. So there's a lot of question marks.
It's a small sample size.
But if I'll tell you what, this is the most optimistic I am about any position group on offense and defense this year.
Wow, okay.
So I'm excited. So just going down the list, Zachariah Branch, in my opinion, huge contributor. Where do you put him? That's the biggest question mark. But can't wait to watch him. Deuce Robinson, another guy who last week I said I think is going to be wide receiver 1 going into this season, using his size and strength on the outside, his catch radius. He was a 5-star recruit as a tight end or receiver. You can put him wherever you want. He has experience at slot. He has experience outside. So I think he's going to make a huge jump this year. Mekhi Lemon, another guy that we're very excited about. Jacoby Lane, another guy that we're excited about. Then you look at some of the veterans on this roster. You have Kyron Hudson, who has felt like he's been here for a long time. And he's been here since I think I started covering this team. But that's a guy that you have to have in that wide receiver room, right? A little bit more of a possession guy, a guy who's going to make the play when he needs it most, but a guy that can lead these younger guys and really rally them together and teach them what it takes to make those big-time plays and big moments to win football games. Another veteran who, again, we're glad to have him back, that we were a little salty about. Kyle Ford transferred from UCLA last year after he transferred away from us, but again, another veteran in that room that is used to making big-time plays and big-time games.
For sure.
And then we got a couple transfer guys as well that I think are going to make some impact this year. Jay Fair from Auburn, who is a junior. I think he'll be a little bit of a rotational guy. We also have Jaden Richardson, who I broke down in the offseason, did some film study on. He had 46 catches, 830 yards, 13 touchdowns. So out of those 46 receptions, 13 of them went for a score. He went to Tufts University, for those of you who don't know. And
right, we broke this all down.
We didn't either, so we did a film study on him, so I won't ruin it if you want to go back and watch that. And then a freshman that I think may have an opportunity. Again, this is a crowded room, but Xavier Jordan. He played a little bit in the spring. He had a couple big-time plays in the spring game, so possible rotation guy, but I think those are going to be the core guys that we're going to see with a couple fringe guys I think that may get some playing time here and there.
I'm actually going to bring up some questions that we got since we're on this topic. We got a question from Rama who said, should we expect Miller Moss to spread the ball around to multiple receivers like he did in the Holiday Bowl?
Yeah, I would expect that, and that's kind of what has been the MO here for Lincoln Riley since he's gotten to USC, and that's what Caleb Williams did. I remember every time we came in for our preview episode that ended up being a recap episode as well.
It was both.
It was both, but I would always start out with one of the biggest stats from the game was 8 different Trojans caught a pass, 10 different Trojans caught a pass, 11 different Trojans caught a pass. Lincoln loves spreading guys around. He loves putting them at different positions. He loves putting Zachariah at slot, putting him outside, putting Deuce Robinson inside on a safety or on a nickelback that makes it impossible for him to cover. He just finds so many different ways to create advantages as an offense and to give you that little bit of an edge that you need at high-level college football. That's so much fun to watch. And 2 other guys I want to talk about, too, that haven't really been brought up a whole lot, but just don't want to forget them. Donovan Wood is a transfer from Middlebury. His stats were crazy. He has 131 receptions in his career, 2,246 yards, and that's only in 3 seasons. And then you also have Charles Ross, who, if you remember from last year, played at San Jose State. He had 5 catches for 62 yards against us. He has 4 touchdowns in his career. So I'm excited to see what he can do for this team as well. But those are 2 other guys that you can add to that depth that can come in and have played college football before and can make an impact on that side of the football.
Ave Bro asked a question that's gunning for your heart, Cody.
Okay.
He said, I feel like we should have gotten Branch in space more last year. Why will this year be different?
So Lincoln said this in a press conference recently, and I know you have the quote ready, or you always have the quotes ready, but I'll go ahead and take your spot on this.
Thank you.
But he did make a point to, we've challenged Zachariah to be more of a factor in the pass game, right? And I think a big part of that is going to be find different ways to get him the football. But the most obvious and the easiest way to do it is put him at slot. And why I say that is because when you play slot, you don't have the sideline kind of cutting you off, right? You can break in. You can break out. You can push vertical. You can run a slot fade. You can run across the field in a deep crossing route. You can sell the cross and run a corner route. It gives you a two-way, almost three-way go if you want to go vertical every single play. So I love him at the slot position. It makes it an absolute nightmare when you have a dominant slot player. I mean, you just think about guys that I've played with in the league before. Julian Edelman was a matchup nightmare. Gronkowski, another guy who played in New England, a matchup nightmare. Then you have other guys like Tyreek Hill who can play X but also can play in the slot. Putting Tyreek Hill and a guy like that, Jalen Waddle, another guy in the slot, to where you're giving them a 2-3-way go, as a defender, it's game over. You've just got to take your lumps and understand, if I win one out of the next 5, that's a pat on the back, and I'm going to move on and keep trying to, or you're going to have to cloud them and run kind of a bracket coverage in the slot, which leaves one-on-one on the outside now. So I love that question. I think Lincoln recognizes that by what he said, saying, hey, we've challenged Zachariah to be better in the pass game this year, and I think Lincoln's going to do a great job of finding ways to get him open.
And to his question of why will this year be different, I also think there's a factor of he was a true freshman last year who had a lot on his plate. He was not only a wide receiver, but he was on special teams as well. More things to know and do. And we've heard from a lot of guys that freshman year, it's like a fire hose of information. So I'm hoping that, 1 year in, he feels more comfortable and can excel in that area as well.
Yeah. And the other thing with that too is he wasn't just playing receiver last year. I mean, that was his, outside of kick and punt return, his primary position, but the Notre Dame game, he played some running back. Then I think against Nevada, he had some end arounds out of the backfield as well, or I think San Jose State. So he not only learn the receiver position, but he would probably have to go into some of those running back meeting rooms or go into those install meetings understanding, hey, I'm learning F, which is slot. I might have to learn some Z and X, which is outside, and I'm also going to learn H, which is out of the backfield as well. So there was a lot on his plate because he is that good of a playmaker. But again, hopefully this year in that second step is not only from a physical standpoint, but also mentally to where he feels a lot more comfortable in this scheme.
We got a question from Josh who said, are people sleeping on Mekhi Lemon?
Yes.
I would say yes
Absolutely.
as well.
In all caps, yes. I really think, and I said this on a video I posted on Instagram last episode of, and I hate using the word forgotten name. I guess under the radar is a better way of saying it. But we had so many breakout players from last year as true freshmen, like Zachariah, like Deuce Robinson. And then we had some veterans that were already here. Taj Washington played phenomenal last year. You had some other transfers come in that were older guys that Mekhi got forgotten about a little bit. And then he went and played on the defense for a couple. I think the Oregon game he had to play DB.
Yes,
so he bounced around. But when he got his opportunity in the Holiday Bowl, I know it was only 2 catches and it's a small sample size, but people forget how good he was at Los Al, right? He was a phenomenal. When we watched,
we watched
his tape out of high school, I'm like, who is this guy? I was watching Malachi at first.
Yeah, which is hilarious because you didn't know that he was a commit.
Well, I'm like,
wide receiver.
Who's number 14? And I didn't know. And then obviously they don't have names on the back of their jerseys in high school. And then the next player I broke down was Mekhi Lemon. And I was ecstatic to find out he was number 14 for Los Al. But again, just a phenomenal player. I think, yes, absolutely. I think he slept on a little bit. I think and that's a good place to be, right? When you have this much talent from your sophomore wide receivers all in the same class, but you haven't seen a ton of them on the field, teams aren't going to know exactly how to prepare for them. And that's going to be an advantage early on. Now, when they catch up a little bit and understand what guys do best, they're going to be able to kind of play towards that. But right now, I expect Mekhi Lemon to come out of the gate swinging, and I think he's going to be a phenomenal player early on in the season. He's going to carry that momentum throughout the rest of the year.
So just a little fun fact. Last week, I was emceeing a donor event, and our main speaker was Mike Williams, who is back at USC. He's back home, if you will.
Yeah.
I believe his title, and I'm probably going to botch this, and I apologize, I believe he's the new director of player personnel for the football program. But towards the end of the event, he took questions from the audience, and someone asked him, again, not for sure, paraphrasing here, who's your favorite wide receiver right now? And he said Mekhi Lemon. And if Mike Williams is saying that, I feel like that points to something. I felt a little vindicated for the both of us.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, if I'm Mekhi Lemon and I hear Mike Williams say that, my my confidence.
Sure.
I don't want to put that on Mekhi because he's a great kid, but my confidence goes up a little bit more. But I really believe that. That's why I say when you're on an offense and Lincoln Riley's the play caller, as a receiver, you're licking your chops every single game because it may be, like we saw a couple years ago with Jordan Addison would come out and have a ton of catches and go for, over 150 and a couple touchdowns. In the next game, Taj Washington would come out and then Mario Williams would come. It was just one after another. When we first got introduced to Lincoln Riley's offense here in 2022, that's continued to be the theme, right? And I just can't wait for this year to see how Lincoln uses all these athletes that he has on the offensive side of the ball and now add Woody Marks out of the backfield into that. it's going to be a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses, and I just can't wait to watch that.
Well, to that point, one last point from that donor event, I was kind of cheeky and also asked a question, even though I was emceeing the event, and I was like, what would a young Mike Williams do in a Lincoln Riley offense? Oh. And without skipping a beat, he goes, well, probably would have won the Blitnikoff. And I was like, because he was a finalist, so it busted up the whole room. He was a great speaker.
Well, that's the thing too, is that's why you get such high-end athletes here at USC. And we had it before, right? It's not like Lincoln got here and all of a sudden we have to there was Mike Williams, there was Marquise Lees, there's the guys I played with, Robert Woods, Nelson Aguilar, Juju Smith, Adoree Jackson. It goes on. But then you add Lincoln to that mix, it takes it to that next level. So I fully agree with Mike on that. He absolutely probably would have won a Blitnikoff.
I don't doubt him.
And a lot more than that. But I'm excited, and it's going to be so much fun to watch because as a first-year quarterback, and we just talked about Miller, when you have all these playmakers around you, it makes your life a lot easier. So again, huge credit to Lincoln and the way he's recruited and he's retained these guys too, because that sophomore class, they're all the same year. With Mackay, with Deuce, with Zachariah, and with Jacoby, it would have been easy for them to go somewhere else and be the guy, at another place. But they all stayed here, and they see the vision that Lincoln has, and I'm excited for the offense this year.
Already moving over to the offensive line, this, for me, is the biggest question mark heading into the season on offense. I think, the post-mortem of last season was the offensive line didn't have as much chemistry as they wanted. And so we've heard Coach Henson talk about how you have to thread the needle of rotating guys, making sure guys get experience. So if, unfortunately, there's an injury, you can put someone in there and they feel confident. But having a starting five, have that chemistry and build it up in fall camp. So he said it's a hard dance that you have to have. And so for me, it's a question mark. Do they have enough experience together? Do they have enough chemistry? And it's head by Jonah Monheim switching positions this season to center. Now, Jonah's super smart. We've heard that from everybody.
Yeah.
I think we know that as well. So obviously full confidence in him. But again, it is a position change. So this to me, Cody, like I said, is a very interesting grouping heading into the season.
Well, under Lincoln Riley, this is the third straight year that we've had a new center.
Yeah.
And it's been Brett Neal on the first year had been center before, but then Justin Dietich made the switch to center last year, and now you have Jonah Monheim making the switch as well. But I think that's the consistency with that is your smartest offensive line, and not to discredit the other four guys or the rest of the room, but your smartest offensive line that knows the offense the best, or offensive lineman, that's who you want at the center spot, right? Because they're making every single call for everyone up and down the line. So, again, I feel fully confident with Jonah Monheim there at center. Again, going back to the spring game, and that's basically what we have to go off of. We know right guard is still up in the air, so we'll talk about the guys that are there, but from left to right, I think it's going to go left tackle Elijah Page, and this is going from the spring game and a little bit of the bowl game as well for some of the guys that played. Left guard, Emmanuel Pregnon. Then center, Jonah Monheim, we just talked about. Right guard, huge question mark. Still don't know. I mean, it's potentially four guys that are competing for that spot coming from the coaching staff from what they said. And then right tackle, I'm pretty confident that Mason Murphy will be at that spot. Now, Lincoln did say, I think in your latest quick hits or previously, might have been last week, about offensive line isn't just five guys, right? You have 7 or 8, sometimes 9 guys that you feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
They're starting to figure that out, but the most important, again, and obviously this isn't groundbreaking news, but those 5 that you play that are going to be that staple, and there's going to be some rotation, but you have to have that continuity. You want to rotate and let other guys play and figure out who plays well with each other in game settings, but it is so important, and we've advocated that for years, of getting that starting 5, getting that 5 solidified, and hopefully, obviously everyone stays healthy, but you want to build that consistency because as a right tackle, you want to know who your right guard is, just to the left of you. Right? Well, you're talking, communicating all day. Other side of the line, left tackle, left guard. You guys have got to be intertwined and working together, and then the center holds everyone together. So it's so difficult to have a new face at a different position every game or every couple of weeks and build chemistry at the same time. So just going off of those guys, other guys that are competing for that right guard spot, like we just mentioned, we have Amos Talalele, who has done a phenomenal job this offseason. You've got Gino Quinones, who's coming back from injury, who has played some significant football here at USC.
It's funny, he's a catch-22 guy because he has experienced the knowledge, but he's not fully healthy yet. Yeah. So it's definitely something where Riley's hinted that he will be a later addition towards the second half of the season.
Yeah, and he said he'll get better as season goes on. And you don't want to rush that, obviously, especially if you're going to have to lean on him late in the year. And then you got Michael Benuelos, who's another guy who's competing for that spot. And then I don't want to say front runner, but the guy that probably has the most experience at that right guard position who started last year, that started the season off at guard position, is Alani Noah. So your guess is as good as mine at this point. I think Henson and Riley are obviously starting to really narrow that down, but at the end of the day, it's still a wide open position battle, a week and a half away from season.
Well, it's interesting. Riley alluded to the fact that minor injuries have popped up amongst the starting five, or who they have wanted to place as the starting five. And so they've had to rotate other guys in. And so he almost said, like, our hand is forced where we can't make that decision yet because we haven't seen enough of maybe who we want to see altogether. So unfortunately, injuries, I think, are playing a little bit into what they want to do heading into that whole chemistry heading into the season.
Yeah, and that's kind of a negative and a positive. The negative is, it's taking time to figure out that starting five, but the positive is forcing other guys who you made, and it's going to build depth, right? It's going to force other guys that you may need this year that you feel comfortable. And I think we talked about this last week about that right guard position. When you have four guys that feel that can compete for that spot, okay, only one of them is going to win that job, but you now know you have three other guys that can play anywhere on the interior of the offensive line, maybe excluding center, because that's a completely different position in itself. But overall, I think this staff, Henson specifically as the O-line coach, is starting to feel comfortable, and he knows who his guys are going to be. It's just, can they stay healthy and can they go perform on Saturdays? Just
a tidbit from me. I talked to Emmanuel Pregnon on Tuesday after practice, and it seemed like he's one of those guys who feels much more confident a year in. There's so much, and we've talked about this, but there's so much to get under your belt when you move somewhere and you're in a new place and you're living with new people, and you're a human at the end of the day, and those are just such big changes. And so he not only said that he feels much more comfortable in that sense, but he's one of the guys who's been really highlighted, especially just from a picture standpoint of the quote unquote big gains that they did this offseason, his body change. And so he said he's feeling better in that sense as well. So I'm curious to see if we can see that translate on the field.
Yeah, there were times last year with Emmanuel Pregnon that I would, and he, coming out of high school, was not a big in recruit, right? He goes to Wyoming, and there's a lot of question marks if he's going to be a high-end D1 athlete. He's one of those late developer guys, right? Now he was one of, I think, a 4-star, almost 5-star transfer portal recruit. We were fortunate enough to get him here at USC, and you see flashes at times to where he can be a dominant offensive line. He's so good on the left side of this offensive line, and I'm excited to see as he continues to grow, not only physically with Coach Wiley, but also mentally in Lincoln Riley's offense. And another guy, Keely Eure, who's been here, I got to mention as well, as possible rotation guy, another guy that's going to add some depth. But the true freshman, don't want to get too much into that because we don't know yet.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, that's 8 guys right there. We have enough. Tobias Raymond, redshirted in 2023, so a potential guy. Another tackle, I think, that's going to be able to be a rotational guy, 6'7", 315 pounds. But outside of those 7, 8, maybe 9 guys, I don't think we're going to have to lean too much on any of those true freshmen. I think we have a solid rotational group of guys right now. And like Lincoln said, getting to those 8 guys, we kind of figuring out who they are. It's just who are the 5 now, right? Who are they going to be those consistent 5? And hopefully we're going to see that continuity this year at the offensive line. And, injuries happen, things are going to happen, but you want to feel comfortable also with those second and third rotational guys as well.
And just one last note for me on the offensive line. This is a hill that I will continue to die on for the last 3 years, is that, when you look at the failures of the last regime, recruiting, specifically offensive line recruiting, lacked. And that's something that you can't make up quickly. No. USC has tried. Obviously, great gets through the transfer portal over the last 3 years, but that's something where you need people in your system. You need them to be there for a while. We talked about, we were not even really mentioning the true freshmen because true freshman offensive linemen need time to get in here, grow, and get comfortable with the system. So for me, it's one of those things where Riley talks about, this still is a turnaround of sorts. This, to me, is where I see that. There's not enough depth where you feel comfortable, but we feel comfortable with the guys that they have. It's one of those like catch-22 is like everyone has to stay healthy, but it's not the depth of a Alabama who's been recruiting 5-star offensive linemen for the last 20 years. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it will take time with Riley at the helm to really replenish that recruiting trail.
Yeah, and I think a big part that's going to help that is going to the Big Ten, right? Yeah. You're going to have to beef up that offense line, and we have done that, right? And it's not to say that the guys that we have here can't win. It's just saying that...
It's not a knock on anyone.
No, not
currently.
at all. And that's what I 100% get what you're saying. But to your point, and I'll say from when I played here, like, it's tough as a true freshman to catch up to the physicality of college football. It's even tougher as an offensive lineman when you're in the trenches as a true freshman.
Going up with Bear Alexander?
To go up against Bear Alexander, go up against Antoine Woods. And I've said this before, it's so difficult when it's that, mass versus mass on the inside. That is where you win and lose football games. And in my opinion, I think that we are going to continue to see the recruiting, and we've already starting to see glimpses of it, not only in the transfer portal, but also in high school recruits. And we've got some guys that I'm excited about in the future. But we're going to see that continue to elevate in the Big Ten, because that's where you're going to have to go up against the Penn State offense and defensive lines, the Michigan offense and defensive line, the interior that Ohio State has. So I'm so excited to see how Lincoln continues to recruit at that position, and Josh Henson, who in my opinion is one of the best offensive line coaches in the entire country. So where we're at this year, I feel comfortable. It's just my biggest question mark right now with those group of guys is who's going to be that solid 5.
Yeah, I guess my main bullet point of that aside was, this is, to me, one of the position groups where the fruits of your labor on the recruiting trail take a long time to actually come to fruition. And so that's my disclaimer there. So
100%.
Moving on to tight ends, I'm not even going to prompt you with my own question, Cody. I'm going to prompt you with Jonathan's question, who said, what's our tight end depth looking like?
Yeah, this, for me, tight ends is probably the position group that I'm most excited about. And if you've listened to the Victory Pod before, we've advocated for how important the tight end position is and how we need to use them more on this offense. And Lincoln recognizes that, right? He's talked about wanting to get the tight ends more involved. And we did that last year, right? We saw them use a little bit more in the vertical passing game. Jude Wolfe had a big touchdown catch against Colorado. So we did not only just use Lake McCree at the starting spot, but we got to the second and third tight ends last year as well. Exciting to see. But this, in my opinion, is the most complete that this room's been. Now, when I say complete, does that mean there's some younger freshmen that are going to have to play? Absolutely. But do I think they're capable of being some legit playmakers at that position? 100%. And I think they've showed that a little bit in spring, and they've showed that some in fall camp. But let's start with the guy who I think is going to be the starter. His third year here, Lake McCree. I know he missed the bowl game last year due to injury, but he's been back this spring or this fall, and he looks like he's getting back healthy again. So in my opinion, he's your starter. He's your lead tight end and the leader of that room. You've also got Walker Lyons, who has now just got here, right? So for those of you,
count him as a young guy? Question mark.
So for those of you who don't know, and Lincoln talked about it, he missed, was it 1 or 2 years?
I think it was 1.
1 year he went on a mission.
Yeah.
Lincoln did say though in his press conference that he stayed in shape as much as he could. Now obviously there's a difference from staying in shape, working out, and getting back to football.
Yeah, Benny Wiley being on you in the weight room,
working with Benny Wiley. I was very high on him when we talked about him, I think, as a recruit, I think 2 years ago. I remember specifically breaking down his film. He is a big-time playmaker. Another guy who's a young player who's here is freshman Joey Olsen, who played phenomenal in the spring game. Another guy that I think can add some great depth to this room, who I think is going to be ready to play right away. I think he's going to be a rotational guy, and I say that because of how well, like I just mentioned, he played in the spring game. He didn't look like a young guy. He looked like a comfortable, I want to say vet yet, he's got to earn that, but he looked like a comfortable contributor to this offense early on as a freshman. So I'm excited to see what he can do. Another guy for me is Carson Tabaracci, who, if you don't know his story, is phenomenal. That was last year was his first year ever playing tight end. He switched from defense, transferred from Utah, had a big catch in the bowl game, and he's going to continue to get comfortable and keep adding depth to that spot. And then we have Walter Matthews, who's a 4-star true freshman, still a question mark, for him, and then Cade Eldridge, a redshirt freshman as well. So I don't know for sure what that room's going to look like. I just know that this is the most depth that we have. And what I mean by that room is how the rotation's going to work. But I'm very excited for Lake Cree going into his third year, and also some of these freshmen that I think are going to make an immediate impact. And again, we're going to the Big Ten. You've got to, you don't have to, but you're going to see a lot of those, 2 and 3 tight end looks. I wouldn't be surprised if Lincoln Riley wants to do that.
Interesting.
And show a little bit of that power that we have and run the football and keep it between the tackles. But overall, we're going to stick to our MO, but it's just good to have some legit playmakers at that position to where you can rotate to your second, third, sometimes even fourth guy at that spot.
I will say, I do think it's interesting that Coach Hansen is very candid. I always appreciate the candid coach, if you haven't figured that out by now. But he basically said, I think I said, how do you take the next step as a tight end room this season? And he said, we know that we are not just competing against each other as a room, we are competing against the wide receivers. He was like, we know we have to prove, why do we get to be on the field rather than adding, Deuce or Zachariah or, it's a harsh reality when your team is so talented, I guess. But they are aware that you need to prove that you can be there every down, whether it's blocking or passing or receiving, I should say. So it's an interesting tidbit there.
Well, that's funny you say that too. And I remember I interviewed Zach Hansen, I think for the bowl game for the Cotton Bowl.
Okay.
And one of my questions was spot on with that. I said, look, tight end is, I don't want to say worst, but probably the most difficult position to play because you don't get the praise and the love as a wide receiver, and you're not quite an offensive lineman, but you've got to do the dirty work of an offensive lineman.
1,000%.
So you're a hybrid in between an O-line and receiver. So you are in a very difficult spot, but that's true. I love that Coach Hansen says that and being, like you said, very candid and out there saying, hey, we've got to earn our catches. We've got to proved to Lincoln that, hey, find me in the red zone. We have Deuce Robinson, who is 6'4", 6'5". We have Jacoby Lane, same size, big, tall guys that you can use, throw the ball up on the outside. But don't forget, we have Lake McCree as well. Now we have Joey Olsen and Tabarachi, and we have, adding Walker Lyons to that group. We have guys that can be dominant in the red zone as well, outside of these stud playmakers that we have on the outside. So I love that. And I really believe that we're going to see a lot more tight end action this season. I hope we do. But you're going into, in my opinion, tight end U of the conferences in the Big Ten. So I'm excited to see our guys compete and keep up with the rest of them.
Alrighty, it is time to switch sides of the ball. We want to talk about USC's defense, probably the biggest overhaul we've seen in recent history or USC history of the defense. Before we get into it, just want to give a thanks to Audi. What you expect from a SUV is a range of sizes to fit your lifestyle. Expectations matter, but exceeding them matters more. The Audi family of SUVs, progress you can feel. And a special thanks to Ralph's. Hey, Trojan fans, celebrate every Trojan win and enjoy the sweet taste of victory with a free donut at Ralph's the day after the win. Download your digital coupon from the Ralph's app to score your free donut at any Los Angeles area Ralph's store.
You lost me at Los Angeles.
Oh, you can drive up.
I was going to say, is this any Ralph's? But
look, at Ralph's.
I want a free donut.
Expand it for our worldwide.
Take it to the Irvine location. Yeah, I'm coming. Yeah, worldwide even. But
sweet taste of victory with a donut. Look at that.
Did you do Ralph's Fresh for everyone at the end? Did you say it? I missed it.
No, I did not.
Okay.
That's coming up.
Oh, okay.
Soon.
I was about to say I better not have missed my fight on. But
you did not.
Good. That was good ad reads. That was first take, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I felt like it was a little rough.
No,
but
you're
it's
good.
Okay.
You're good. I sometimes even if you miss a word, you got to fight through it. We can't be perfect.
You got to fight on.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. We're getting cheesy now. Defense.
Let's talk about the corners. This is a fascinating position for me, to be honest, solely because, and we say this all the time, but I feel like we haven't seen a dominant starter since maybe Mekhi Blackman.
True.
Lincoln's
Agreed,
first year.
100%.
And so that's something where USC needs a presence there. And what's interesting is it seems like, and what we've heard, Jalen Smith has made an impact there. He's listed as a corner on USC's roster, not a safety anymore. So it seems like he's making a splash there at corner, but I will let you take it away, Cody.
Yeah, and I love, just sticking on that real quick, what Coach Belk said about Jalen. He's probably the only guy on our defense or in our secondary that can play all five spots. And what I mean by all five is strong safety, free safety, left corner, right corner, or nickelback. And that's where we saw him a lot of last year, was that nickel position. Mm-hmm. But he is really establishing himself, and he looks good. He looks really good in the film.
The number change, though?
Well, he's number 2 now, right?
I keep looking for 19.
For 19,
yeah.
But he's established himself as really a leader in the secondary at any spot, right? And now we're coaching the safeties and the corners all together. Now they're all one big cohesive group. Mm-hmm. So he really has that vocal leadership and kind of leading by example for not only the safeties but the corners, because he's played pretty much every spot. But yeah, starting with Jalen, I put starter and I put anywhere. That was my follow-up is, can he play outside corner? Is he going to play nickel? Is he going to play safety? Nickel packages, maybe see him on the inside, and dime packages, maybe put him at safety and bring, a Keely or bring down Jalen Kamari. I'm thinking Jalen Ramsey. That's a good comparison. But Kamari Ramsey, bring them down and cover a bigger tight end and let Jalen go back there and play that center field position. So I really think he can play anywhere on this defense, and I'm excited to see how versatile and that's a word we use a lot for Lynn's defense, how versatile he can be on the secondary.
I was just about to say that. I think part of the reason why he's getting so much praise is because he's the perfect weapon for this defense that goes for multiple looks, wants guys to be as versatile as possible. I mean, I talked to Coach Belk about it. I was like, it's just interesting what happens when you combine the safeties and corners from a teaching perspective. And he was like, I want everyone to know what we're doing and why we're doing it. Doesn't matter if you're a safety, doesn't matter if you're a corner. You you just need to know, and we might throw you in wherever. And so obviously Jalen Smith has been a versatile weapon, and it continues to be the case this offseason.
And go back and watch to give proof of that. Go back and watch our game against UCLA last year.
Yeah.
You're going to see Humphrey over here. You're going to see Ramsey down, or just watch when I did Kamari's breakdown film and John Humphrey's breakdown film. There was times against Utah where he's on the line of scrimmage, and then the next play he's over covering a tight end and man out wide and in a different formation. And then you have John Humphrey playing safety at different times or playing nickel. So that's absolutely true. And that's why it's tough to say or really lock guys into corner or left corner, right corner. So you're going to see them all over the field. But kind of going down the line, you got Jacoby Covington, who in my opinion, it's Jacoby's time to step up. I really believe that. And
do or die in that sense.
It's just the physicality is there. The playmaker ability at corner is there. The knowledge is there. It's just that consistency that the coaches have been looking for. And they've praised him since he stepped on campus to where it's been up and down, but he's starting to trend in the right direction. You really see that. He started the spring game at corner. I want him to really take that role as cornerback one, as your lockdown corner that, hey, we've got a premier X this game or we've got a premier Z this game. Jacoby, you got him. Mm-hmm. Everyone else will figure out your spots, right? So I want to see Jacoby take that next step, and I really feel like he can do that. This is the biggest opportunity for him this year. It sounds like he's been having a great camp, and he looked great in spring as well. And then keep going. Prophet Brown, I think, is going to be another guy that you can rotate a lot. He did start the spring game at nickel, so is he going to be playing a little bit more in that nickel position this year?
Also, bowl guy.
Bowl
game guy,
game.
I should say.
Bowl guy.
Also, great tackler in the bowl game. I was like, wow, hello.
He got a lot of deserved praise in that game. And he did get thrown into a couple games, I think Oregon and some other games, to where he wasn't a starter but got thrown in, which is difficult to do.
100%.
But now he's competing for that starting spot. Another guy that I'm very high on is DeCarlos Nicholson. He was the other starting corner in the spring game. Big physical guy from Mississippi State. Potential starter. If not a starter, he's absolutely going to be a rotational guy that we're going to see a lot on the field. And especially going to the Big Ten, you need to have those physical corners that can not only cover but can come downhill and tackle those bigger backs and even cover some of those tight ends as well. Again, versatility. Is he going to move to the inside and cover some of those, big pass catchers that we go against? But overall, love this tape. He's another guy that's, if you want to go back and watch some of his film, a lot of fun to watch. John Humphrey, another guy who came from UCLA with Kamari Ramsey, someone that I think is going to be very important. Obviously, he's coming back from injury, so he missed spring.
Yeah,
he's going to be a little bit behind.
Yeah, that's what it seems like from what we've heard from the coaches, that unfortunately he was out for most of spring camp, and that's just such a important time. So it's kind of like,
especially as a transfer.
Yes.
The only positive for him though is he is in Lynn's system. Yeah. So he's going to be used to that, but you can't it's tough to make up missed practices. That's very difficult, and missed reps most importantely. But
long and lanky though.
But
like,
again,
he's a guy who, when I saw on the practice field, I was like, you are a tall, lean guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what that cornerback position is starting to trend to, right?
I know, you can see it.
No knock on the smaller corners. There's a lot of great corners, but you see the Patrick Surtains of the world. You see, some of those bigger Jalen Ramsey type corners are really starting to become a staple. Sauce Gardner, another guy in the NFL and at college football. And then some of the freshmen that I'm excited about. Braylon Conley is a 3-star true freshman who I don't think is going to get, you never know, may rotate a little bit with how much we use guys. Isaiah Rubin, a 4-star true freshman, but a true freshman that I think can potentially make an immediate impact is Marcellus Williams. And we've already heard
great
the praise that he's got from this coaching staff. And he played a lot in the spring game. He was with the second group, and I say second group, Doug Belk. I love what he said. He said A, Bs, and Cs.
He was like, we don't have ones and twos.
Yeah, and I love that.
Yeah.
I truly believe, and some coaches say that because they want to keep confidence in different players, but I truly believe that when it comes to Lynn's system, it's not 1, 2, and 3. It's A, B, C. Can we rotate the C's with the A's today and the B's with there's just different unique groups that you can use and, let other guys play with one another to where it's not, all right, first unit, second unit, third unit. So I truly believe that. And then the last guy I'll say you feel for, obviously won't be playing this year, Malachi Crawford.
Yeah.
Hate to see that. Another guy that was developing well and just suffered a season-ending injury. So I hope that he has a great recovery and comes back strong next year, but just unfortunate to see that. So I know he's not going to be playing this year, but I got to give him a shout out and I feel for my guy.
Yeah. It was interesting hearing Riley's comments about the 3 freshmen that you just mentioned. He said that Marcellus in the spring really earned the respect of the room, which I think is a big statement there, but also he was just really high on those 3 and where they are at as inexperienced as they are. He was like, the future is bright in that room.
Agreed.
So you love that for depth's sake, for, continuity's sake. You like having guys come in there early and be sponges, so that way when their time's ready, they are ready. So,
and you might be saying, hey, Cody, why are we talking about true freshmen after all the names you just listed? But some of these guys are going to have to play this year or have a potential to play this year that you may not think we're going. You may think they may be redshirt guys, but also you get that 4-game leeway now to where we may see some of these younger guys early and often
for sure
until they kind of burn that redshirt year. Or they don't want to burn that redshirt year and then use them again in bowl games. So again, just trying to give you credit for or give you an idea of who the guys may be. But yeah, my biggest and again, love all the freshmen, but I think Marcellus Williams, who's the younger brother of Max Williams, by the way, great
who
Trojan.
Is a favorite on the Victory Podcast. We
absolutely
love him.
But
great guy.
I feel very good about this cornerback position, about this rotational area, I guess you will, about guys playing at different spots. But I'm just, like I said, I'm ready for someone to solidify that lockdown corner position, and I really believe Jacoby Covington has a great opportunity to do that.
Yeah, ideally, I would say, and tell me if you agree or not, it should be a season where we're not in game 6 going, who's going to be the 2 starting corners?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
please don't do
continuity's sake, for consistency for this defense, that should be settled.
Yeah, and the frustrating part, that was happening last year. And oh, by the way, we're about to play Oregon, who has the number 1 pass defense in the country. And no knock on him. He's a guy that says, I'll do whatever it takes. But we're trying Mekhi Lemon at corner. So that was
not ideal.
Not ideal. Obviously you want to have that consistency. And injuries do happen. We understand that. But I'm ready for someone to solidify. I'm fine with 1, 2, and even a 3 depth, or A, B, a C, and even a D, where you feel comfortable with 4 guys at corner. But I'm just ready to see someone solidify themselves as that lockdown guy, that no matter what, we know that they have a dominant playmaker on the other side of the field on offense. Jacoby's got him this game, or DeCarlos has got him, or Jalen's got him, whoever it may be. I'm excited for someone to step up and take that role.
Now, this next position group I'm excited about, particularly Keely Arnold and Kamari Ramsey. I've heard so much good stuff about them this offseason, particularly how smart they are from a football IQ perspective, and that's what you want from your safeties. So we haven't seen a lot of them, in obviously we haven't seen them in game action yet as a Trojan, but I'm just really curious to see how that football IQ translates onto the field.
Yeah, I'll start there. I think those are going to be 2 premier playmakers on the defensive side of the ball. Keely Arnold, ton of experience at the college level. Very smart, instinctive player. There was a lot of game film last year when I broke down his tape that stuff you can't teach, right? As a player, he's so instinctive. He does a great job, and you can tell that he studies his film, right? When a guy has watched his opponent enough to know, I know when he's going to break in, I know he's going to break out, when he lines up a certain way. And obviously, I've never spoken to him, but you can kind of feel that. And I did a ton of scouting when I'd go against defenses about, this is a smart player. We can take advantage. This guy, maybe misses on some of the go balls, misses on the post routes. You can beat him to the inside. There's not a lot of weaknesses in Keely Arnold's gameplay, the way man zone, whatever you want to call it, or when he's down in the box, and he's a very good tackler as well. But I think he's going to be one of those starters and a premier playmaker on defense. Now, Kamari Ramsey, and I've said this last week, is, in my opinion, the most important player to our defense this year, because he's an extension of Coach Lynn.
Yeah.
He was on the team, or he was at UCLA last year with Lynn. He's the only player outside of John Humphrey that's really been in this system on the field and has played a whole lot. He is so important, not only to being an extension of Lynn, but also in the meeting rooms, to talking to the guys, to sitting in the lounge or the locker room after practice and just messing around and hanging out when a guy comes up and says, Kamari, walk me through cover 2 again, or walk me through this stunt or this blitz or what. He can be able to talk to everyone from the top down, right? To the corners, to the linebackers, to the defensive line, because as a safety, and you may argue a middle linebacker's the coach or the quarterback of the defense,
but
as a safety, you see everything. And I feel so comfortable with Kamari Ramsey there. I for sure think he's going to be a starter. I feel comfortable saying that out loud. And he needs to have a big year. And again, just really excited for his development. He's a younger guy too. He's not like
it's
a 5th
crazy.
year, 4th year senior type player. He is a younger. I think he's only in year 2.
Yes.
Redshirt.
He's 19 right now.
Yeah.
And turns 20 this month.
And Miller said he's the smartest player that he's ever seen.
Yes, he's
or
ever
gone
played
against on defense.
Yeah. Which is insane. I think I was actually talking to Belk about this. I was like, I feel like Kamari is a guy who you look at him and you're like, oh, he's a redshirt senior. He's been here for a bajillion years. That, like, part of the reason why he's so smart is he has so much experience to back it up. But no, he's young and so just smart in a football sense. So it's exciting for USC's future in that sense that you do get him for a couple more years.
Absolutely. And then kind of going down, some of the other guys I think are going to have a big impact on the Stevens. Anthony Beavers Jr. Played well in the bowl game, really got an opportunity there. Had a huge forced fumble, was excited to see him get on the field. Showed flashes at times last year of how well he can be in that secondary spot. So I expect Anthony to play a good amount this year. Bryson Shaw, another veteran player who, solid rotational guy. He started at times last year. I remember he earned the starting spot, and then he kind of fell off a little bit and lost it, then came back and was needed because of injury a couple times. But someone who I would just love to see a little bit more consistency this year, but someone you feel comfortable with knowing you have another vet back there at safety, and I think he's going to play a good amount this year. Zion Branch, I want to see him.
We all do.
I mean, and this is one of those guys, again, you get emotional about, right? Because you know how much it means to him. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, he's dealt with the season-ending injuries before, but he is probably the most positive bounce-back player that I've ever seen, and he's had a small sample size on the field. It's not like we've seen, he's been great on the field, had an injury. All right, I know, right? He really hasn't had that opportunity. We've seen flashes of how good he can be, but we just want him to stay healthy, and I'm really hoping he does. And someone that I'm really rooting for on a personal level this year is Zion Branch. Will always stick with me, his quote in the media about, I think someone asked him, where do you want to play this year? And he said, I don't care where you want me to play or wherever the coaches want me to play. I just want to be on the field with my teammates. Yeah. That's it. And some guys say that in a cliche way. You could tell he meant that. Like, I don't care, guys. I just want to be on the field because it means so much to me. So hope Zion has a great year. And then Christian Pierce.
He's a guy who, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Very excited about.
Ton of upside.
From the practices I've seen, even a while back, he was a guy who would make a hit where people go, oh my gosh. Like, I don't want to invoke the Taylor Mays comparison, but in that realm where you're like, is that guy okay? Because he just like came out of nowhere and hit him.
And we saw some, like you said, the spring game played very well. A ton of praise for him as a true freshman this year. A ton of praise last year in spring camp. He's been getting some praise as well this offseason, but he's one of my biggest question marks right now at that position because we are so loaded on the back end right now, and you have some veterans back there as well. But he's a younger guy that I think could potentially be starting maybe this year or work his way into a starting role, again, with how much Lynn rotates. But he's definitely, in my opinion, I think going to be an impact player. At some point this year, there's going to be a time when you need to lean on him, and he's a guy that absolutely can get it done. And who knows? He may play himself into a starting spot, or he may play himself into a nickel position, or even play some corner on some bigger receivers. But a guy that I'm very excited about, again, a big question mark because it's such a small sample size, but a ton of upside and a ton of potential. And there's a couple true freshmen that we may see. But again, I think it's going to be those kind of veteran-type players. It's going to be the core back there at the safety position. And I'm excited. Again, another group that I think has taken a step further this last year, and we've added some much-needed depth and some much-needed experience to that group.
For sure. Let's move on to the linebackers. Talking about transfer portal, Easton Mascarenas-Arnold seemed like a guy who came in quickly and got comfortable. What do you see from that linebacker room? Yeah,
I'm going Easton Mascarenas-Arnold is, in my opinion, and I think it's safe to say, a starter. He's going to be a guy that has to, again, probably if Kamari Ramsey's most important, he's 1B. He is right there behind him. We saw a lack of consistency last year at the linebacker position. There were times when it was such a mismatch, or not mismatch, we were mixing and matching at that spot, right?
Constantly.
Started with Tackett Curtis, then we went to Rajon Davis one game, then it was Eric Gentry, then he got hurt or he had some injuries and then wasn't playing as consistent, then went to Shane Lee, then we bounced back to Cobb.
This is also during drives, like within a game. This is not,
We're trying these two the first couple series, then we're going these two. So it was frustrating, kind of like the corner position, right? Where it was so much rotation. This is the year we need to solidify it. And it's so important going into the Big Ten. You have to be able to tackle and stop the run. Easton Mascarenas-Arnold does just that. 106 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions last year. First team all Pac-12. Rest in peace, Pac-12. But a first team all Pac-12 linebacker. Second in tackles in the Pac-12. And he also played 3 less games than the guy who was first. So he could have had 106, probably could have had about 120, 130 at the rate he was going. But again, I put starter, absolutely huge impact player. Now, the biggest question for me is who's going to be next to him, right? Because Mason Cobb is a guy that comes to mind who we saw flashes of how good he can be. The year before at Oklahoma State had 96 tackles, so we know he's a tackling machine. He just lost a little bit of that spark, and like you mentioned, a little bit of that confidence last week about thinking too much in that scheme, or maybe trying to make up for other guys instead of playing free. And you made such a great point about that last week. So I want to see him get that confidence back and be the player that we know he can be, because there were times I remember watching film and it looked like he was shot out of a cannon coming through the A gap or the B gap and making a play in the backfield. And I'd pause it, who was that guy? And I was 13 and Mason Cobb. And then a couple plays later, he looked a little lost and sliding outside to the C gap when he has A gap, responsibility and giving up big plays. So I'm just excited to see him get back to the potential I know that he can play at. Go ahead.
I had a question, just like from a mental perspective, is this basically the best opportunity for Mason Cobb to kind of turn the page because he's with a new coaching staff, he's with a new scheme, he can kind of put last year behind him and really restart now? Is like, this feels like a great opportunity to kind of just leave last year in last year.
Yeah, and absolutely. And the biggest thing for that is it wasn't like he got buried on the depth chart and now we brought in a ton of guys, right? So outside of Easton Mascarenas-Arnold, it's really the same room from a year ago besides guys that have left. But it wasn't like, all right, Mason Cobb's not going to get it done. We need new guys, get him out. No, there's still belief in him and there's an opportunity, and he has everything that he wants in front of him, and it's a turn the page year, right? That's the most important thing, is watch yourself scout when the season ends. Go back and learn from your mistakes. But after that, burn the tape. Don't look at it. Don't talk about it ever again. Learn from it. Make sure you keep your notes on you so you know what you need to do better this year. But don't go backwards, right? And I really feel like this is a year for Mason Cobb to take one big step or even 2 steps forward and assert himself as a dominant linebacker on this team. Another guy, though, that's going to be fighting for that job with him is Eric Gentry, who has been so good at times and then been lacking consistency at times, right? Times where it's frustrating because you know how good he can be.
Yeah.
And he's put on some size. He does look bigger. Obviously, they said they've tried so hard. His metabolism is probably crazy because it's so hard for him to keep that size. But he does absolutely look bigger this year. I'm excited about that. He looks a little bit more physical. But he's another guy, again, that played so well in 2022. Last year, I felt like he fell off a little bit. Or not fell off, but wasn't as consistent as he was a year prior.
Yeah.
But again, another guy that has a great opportunity. And someone that's a little bit under the radar and had flashes last year is Rajon Davis. I think people kind of forget about him in that rotation, about how good he can be. I think there was a game he paired up with, I want to say, Tackett Curtis, and Lincoln said that's the best our linebackers have played so far this year. I think it was Colorado, or maybe a game around that time, or Arizona State maybe.
It's a blur, I'm so sorry.
Okay, but one of those games kind of in the middle. I know the season's run, but he played very well. And again, that's what you want from those position groups is first potential. I see how good you can be, and then after that, the most important part is consistency.
Yeah.
And then you dominate from there. Can I do it over and over and over again? Rajon is a guy that I think can take that next step. And then again, a couple true freshmen that we may see a little bit. Desmond Stevens II, Elijah Newby, both high-end 4-star players that are both spring and rollees, so they have that spring under their belt. Will we see them in the rotation? Because it's not a very crowded room. Now, again, you can add those defensive ends to the linebacker room, I guess, a little bit in Lynn's defense. But overall, I think some of these true freshmen may get an opportunity to play a little bit this year. Jaden Walker, another guy. But just with all that being said, the rotation, again, kind of like O-line, kind of like safety, corner, all these positions we've talked about is the biggest question mark for me, but we do have guys there that can go out and dominate and be efficient in this defense.
I know we talked about this last week, but just in the sense of overloading the linebackers, where does in-helmet communication fall in that array, you know?
The crazy part about that, and we talked about it last week, and I don't think I brought this up, the rotation part of that, because you can only have one player on the field at a time with the in-helmet communication. Now, they're going to have multiple helmets on the sideline, so Mason Cobb will have a helmet without the in-helmet communication, then he'll have a helmet ready to go if he needs it with it, so they can just switch those out. Same with Mascarenas Arnold. I'm sure Gentry and Davis will have some emergency helmets as well, but it's going to be weird because you're not going to be able to mix and match, and are you going to have to keep one player on the field at all times with that helmet on as well? Or, how much are you going to rotate that?
Yeah.
It's not like a quarterback to where if something happened with Miller, you're sending another quarterback in that already is going to have that green dot and the earpiece in his helmet. With the linebacker, you rotate so much that it's going to be weird to do that. And I'm sure they're not going to have to, you're not going to worry if you don't have it because Lynn has called a defense before without it. And so have the rest of the staff. But yeah, that's going to be interesting. And I'm so curious, both offense and defense, to see how that in-helmet's going to play out this year. And we've had some predictions last week, but it's going to be fun to watch when September 1st comes around, how the coaches really use it, or asking Lincoln after the game, what was the role of the in-helmet communication on during the game?
Yeah, such a great point. And two, just watching the sidelines too. Does that change? Like, there's usually a lot of frantic communication happening on the sideline to the players on the field. Is that going to be a little bit more?
Well, it's going to go from all hand signals and pretty much all hand signals, I think, is what Lincoln uses now to, I think they're still, like I said last week, I think it's going to be used more in the ghost.
We got to see.
Fake a play, hut, and then signal still. But who knows? Are we going to huddle up and call plays and Miller's going to have it in his head the whole time and call it in the huddle? Maybe, but I highly doubt it. But who knows?
Something to watch for. Another thing to watch for on next Sunday.
I'm so excited. It's crazy.
So fast.
That we're talking about the game being less than a week and a half away. It's
wild.
And we're talking about in-helmet communication, which is a new thing. And we're talking about the Big Ten, which is a new thing. And Miller Moss is a starting quarterback. It just,
so
when you get out of playing, I'm getting off topic here, but when you get done playing, and when you're playing too, it's exciting, but as a fan, I understand why, you have that each year brings its own storyline, and so many, that's why people love sports so much at any level in any sport, is there's just so many uncertainties every year, and you get to learn about the unsung heroes or the new playmakers, or the new storylines. College football is almost here, people. We are excited.
Hope springs eternal is basically what you're saying. Alrighty, two more position groups for us to go through. Next up is the interior defensive line. Very interested about this one. I feel like I've said that for every position group now, and I apologize. Just because we've heard great things about Gavin Meyer. He was a summer enrollee, transferred from Wyoming over the summer. We've heard great things about Kobe Pepe, who's been here for a while, who's taken the next step. I believe Riley said he was one of those guys when he first got here where he didn't know if he was going to, quote unquote, make it, is what he said. Will he keep up with what this program demands under Riley? And then Bear Alexander. That's someone who publicly Riley has called on to take the next step this season, be more consistent. And so there's a lot of potential there, but who steps up? And I know there's other names I haven't mentioned, but curious what you're thinking there, Cody.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the guys that have been here, and one of the guys you just mentioned, Bear Alexander, who was so good a year ago. But I love, that's how you go from good to great, right? When your head coach, after you have a dominant year, challenges you in the offseason and says, hey, let's take that next step. What does that next step look like? It's X, Y, and Z, and he kind of calls you in the office, and you get with Lynn, and you get with Nua, and you get with Coach Henney, and you talk about being that dominant playmaker, that guy that's going to be, and in my opinion, so important to this defense, right? You talk about the edge rushers, which we're going to get to in a second. You talk about the linebackers, the back end, but Bear Alexander and the guys in the interior of this defensive line are going to be instrumental to the success that we have on Lynn's scheme, because you have to be able, especially in the Big Ten, to clog the middle of the. Yep. I can't tell you how important Antoine Woods was. He didn't get a ton of praise, didn't get a ton of love besides his Twaka TV and all those funny things he'd do outside of football, but he was one of those unsung hero type players.
Yeah.
Just how important he was in the middle of your defense, and it made it impossible. Teams come into the games knowing, hey, there's a Bear Alexander, there's a Kobe Pepe, there's a Elijah Hughes, Nate Clifton. We've got to run outside. We're not going in, Aaron Donald type player. We can't run in between the A and B gap this week. We've got to go outside, right? You take an entire part of the field out of play, and I think Bear Alexander can be that. Huge key player. Just can he take that next step? And I think the answer is yes. Another guy that I'm excited about, a freshman from last year, Elijah Hughes, who we saw flashes of, played very well in the bowl game. The coaches gave him a little bit of praise this offseason as well. I expect him to take that kind of freshman, sophomore step this year and make a big impact. And then probably the guy I'm rooting for the most after hearing the interview, and I'm rooting for all these guys, but the guy that was really cool to hear talk was Kobe Pepe. You love rooting for a guy like that. And Lincoln is a coach that'll tell it how it is. And he wasn't just sugarcoating that. He said, hey, I don't think Kobe was going to make it. And coaches, after they see a player, they see a guy, work ethic, capability of like where he can get to, potential, they'll go to the meetings and say, hey, cool, we can work with him, we'll try, but I don't think he's going to make it. Teams see that. For him to change that mind of Lincoln, and it's not saying that the coaches would give up on him, but to change that
perception. Yeah,
perception of you, or that opinion of you, to now being a starter on this defense. In my opinion, starting in the spring game, I think he's going to be a starter as well on the interior of this defensive line. Takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. And I love what he said in that interview. He said, look, the two people that meant the most to me in this was Sean Nua, which is his position coach, and Coach Wiley. Mm-hmm. And that's awesome to hear, because and I had a great relationship with Ivan Lewis when he was here as our strength coach. That's where football seasons are won and lost. In the off-season prep, in the 6 a.m. workouts or the 5:30 a.m. runs when it's dark and you don't want to be there, when you really question how much do I love the game, you learn a lot about yourself. And it sounds like Wiley, and we've known this for a couple of years now, is an amazing motivator, and he really got Kobe, and I'm sure a lot of other guys on this team, if you asked him, to see their potential and know where they can get. So I'm so excited for Kobe. I think he's going to have a phenomenal year this year. I hope he stays healthy. I hope he has a huge impact on this defense. And again, Lincoln said, another guy that I think saw his potential in Lynn's defense and how important he's going to be, knows that, hey, I've got to kind of make or break this year and really go out there and go get it. And I think he's going to do that. But now some of the newcomers, like you mentioned, Gavin Meyer, as a name that's been coming up a lot lately. Who
Coach Henney singing his praises.
Loved him. And I didn't know a whole lot about him. Obviously, we did our transfer breakdown about the spring enrollees, but we didn't get to do a summer episode.
Yeah.
And I didn't know a whole lot about him, so I went back and looked last night. 6'3", 290-pound redshirt senior who is going to not only be a rotational guy, have a chance to be a starter, I think, in some situations, or depending on who the opponent is that week, if he continues this trend of how well he's playing. So that's great to hear from a depth standpoint. Another guy that I'm very high on, Nate Clifton, transferred from Vanderbilt, very versatile player. He's listed as interior defensive line, but in my opinion, I think he's going to be a guy that can play outside, can play inside, put him at 3-tech, put him at defensive end. I don't know if he'll play a whole lot of a zero technique or a shade technique. Well, okay. I mean, I say that last year. I think we saw a game against us. Latu was in a 4-point stance over Justin Dedich on a third down situation. So who knows? But overall, the depth that we have on the interior defensive line this year, it has to make you feel very comfortable. And it really feels like Gavin Meyer was kind of that last piece.
Yeah.
To where, okay, I'm comfortable with this 4, but now we have a 5th as well.
Yeah.
I feel a lot better than I did before. So I'm excited to see how this whole situation plays out in that group.
Awesome. Well, now it's time for our final position group. It's the edge rushers, like you mentioned. Last but not least, I think we all saw great things from Jamil Muhammad last season. Do we still count him as my guy?
Keely,
I said he was
100%.
underrated.
No, you said, the question was, and I wrote that in my notes.
Pick? Oh, thank you.
You said someone asked of the transfer players, who's going to have the biggest impact or breakout year? And you picked Jamil Muhammad.
Wow.
And I would say him and Bear Alexander were right on there. But I think Jamil
I think it was an underrated pick because Bear was like very obvious.
No, I think I picked Bear and you said I'm going to go with Jamil. Okay. Because the article just came out about how he used to play quarterback.
Yeah.
And you were like, something's telling me Jamil this year, but hey, that's all you. That's all your football knowledge.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you very much. I'm pro quarterback.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'll start with Jamil at that edge position. He's going to be so important in that spot. Him and Anthony Lucas, in my opinion, are going to be two guys that are returning, both transfer guys, now have a year under their belt in this system. Anthony Lucas was a very high-end recruit. We loved his tape when we watched him and when he came from Texas A&M.
Yeah.
I think he was a 5-star, number one defensive end, I think, or rush in the country as a high school recruit. So the potential's there.
Yeah, basically had a freshman year last year again.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly, because he didn't play a whole lot his first year.
Yeah.
Not a lot of film and stats to go off of. But yeah, last year was... Again, and he's wearing number 6, so got to love that. But got to give him a shout out there. But yeah, no, I think Anthony Lucas, Jamil Muhammad, you can kind of put in that same category as leaders at that defensive end spot, rush edge, whatever you want to call it. And they're going to be so important coming off the edge, being able to work in, work out, do that radar type defense where guys are bouncing around and spinning before pre-snap on 3rd and long situations or on 3rd and obvious passing situations to where they can put their foot in the ground, pin their ears back, and all they're going to be told to do is go get the quarterback, right? Keep outside contained, but go get a sack and make it difficult and collapse the pocket on opposing quarterbacks. So I'm excited to see both of them. I think they're both going to take that next step. And I'm just so optimistic about what both of them can do this upcoming season, and those are going to be the leaders in that room. Now, my biggest breakout player this year, I think on offense and defense, or
as
I'll say, for everyone, I'm going to say from that first to second year, right? They always talk about college, at high school, college, NFL, from your freshman to sophomore or from your rookie to your second year in the NFL. That is the most important jump that you can make, and that's where you really understand if guys can take that next step. My biggest guy I think is going to exceed expectations is Braylon Shelby. I'm a big fan of his. I love watching him on tape. I love the work that he's put in this offseason with Coach Wiley. He is a specimen of a human being on defense.
Looks bigger, for sure.
Yeah, and stronger and faster and quicker. I expect him to be a starter / borderline rotational guy. He's going to be a huge impact. We're going to see a lot of Braylon Shelby this year. Again, I think Jamil Muhammad and Anthony Lucas have earned the right to be the starters on the outside, but Braylon Shelby is going to be 1C, if you will, right behind both of those guys. And I'm just excited to see what he can do now in year 2, especially with Lynn's new defense. The other two guys that I think are going to make an impact, and another guy that didn't play a whole lot last year, but I think he's going to continue to develop, is Sam Green. We've heard some good things from him out of camp as well. A lot of upside. I'm excited to see how he can continue to develop. I think he's going to be a rotational guy this year and get some opportunities and get some playing time, and a guy that I think will make the most of it. And the last guy, who is a Trojan through and through, who I'm very excited about, and hopefully he can stay healthy this year, is Solo.
Knocking on all the wood.
Yeah, Solomon Tuliaupupu. We've seen, I think last year in the spring game, not this past one, but before was a starter, had potential, and then he had an injury last year, so, missed that season. And it's just tough when you see a guy starting to hit his stride and take that next step and then things like that happen. But it's a physical sport and stuff like that's going to happen. But I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to be a bounce-back player this year. He's already off to a great start and heard some great things for him throughout camp. So, again, a rotational guy, just has to stay healthy, has to keep himself on the field, but a ton of potential and upside, and a leader on the defensive side of the football.
I feel the need to correct myself journalistically speaking, even though this doesn't matter at all. I think I've said in the past that he's currently getting his PhD. That's incorrect. He's getting his second master's degree.
Ooh.
Just had to clarify.
Second master's now, okay?
Yeah, I know.
Don't discredit my guy.
Well, I didn't. I gave him more credit, actually.
Would you say? Oh my gosh, all the doctors are going to be coming for me, huh?
Yeah.
If I say is second master's, that's not as big as a PhD. We're getting way out.
Look, I'm not going to weigh in on that.
This is way out. If someone knows,
insult everyone.
What is the difference between? I'm asking the wrong person. No, I mean that in a disrespectful way. But I'm gonna put you on record, and then someone's gonna be like, "Actually, Keely, that's wrong."
Yeah, no. I only have my bachelor's, so
Either
I
way,
cannot speak on this matter.
He's a very smart player, but I love that. He's setting himself up for success for the rest of his life, because if injuries do happen, things do happen. I brought it back together. I'm getting used to this media
thing.
Look
at you, full-time broadcaster.
They're keeping me around for another year for a reason.
Woo.
But for anybody who's gotten a PhD or a second master's, I'm not trying to discredit either one.
We respect you.
Respect both. But love that. And again, that just shows his work ethic, not only on the field, but off the field as well. And then a couple freshmen that we may see again, just to bring them up. DJ Peavy is a 4-star recruit. He redshirted in 2023, so he's a redshirt freshman this year. Lorenzo Cohen is a 3-star spring enrollee recruit.
Cowan, I believe.
Is it Cowan? Okay.
I believe so.
Lorenzo Cowan. And then Cameron Fountain.
People are excited about Cameron Fountain.
Well, I think there was a video about how big he was, right? Walking out of the tunnel, I think, or something.
That was Elijah Page, but yes.
No, there was Elijah Page video, but there was a more recent one.
And then I saw one this morning about Emmanuel Pregnon. There's just a lot of
Maybe
videos.
That's who it was. Maybe it was Pregnon.
Of people being like, this person's large.
But anyways, just imagine 6'6", 265 pounds, 4-star recruit, spring enrollee, potential competition rotational player this year if needed. But some of these guys that are true freshmen, can you imagine as a high school senior a year ago having to go block Cameron after, like, you finish, I just failed my math test in 7th period, and now tonight I've got to go block Cameron Fountain for 4 straight quarters at defensive end at 6'6", 265, or Braylon Shelby when he was in high school.
No, thank you.
Just a nightmare. So I love that they're here at USC, but those are some of the freshmen to maybe keep an eye on. But overall, that is, outside of special teams, we did kickers and punters last week.
Yeah.
If you want to go back and watch that episode, still no further information. So I think it's a 5-headed competition still, and only time will tell.
We'll see. Maybe the depth chart we'll see.
Yeah, who will be that leading guy. And again, but overall, that's the entire staff. Sorry if we talked a lot. We didn't want to leave people out.
It's a podcast.
It's a podcast. We talk a lot. But
we got to get into questions.
And we're not even done with questions yet.
Yeah, you sound like you're wrapping it up, and I just want everyone to know
I feel like we're taking a breath now that we just talked about.
You can take a breath.
There was I think 100-something players now, and we pretty much got every single one of them. So
wow. It's a preview. We said it was a preview, and it's a preview. I'm going to give you a break, and I'm going to give a thanks to Audi. Focus matters. Listen closely. The Audi Q8 e-tron's cabin is serenely quiet, so you can focus on other things like having tomorrow's technology today. The new fully electric Audi Q8 e-tron, how we get there matters. And thanks to Ralph's. At Ralph's, everyone wins when it comes to saving big, because when you order online through the Ralph's app, you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup or delivery that you do in store. So no matter how you shop, you always save big at Ralph's. Ralph's, fresh for everyone. Cody?
Fight on.
Boom. Look at that.
That was good. You also changed it from the rundown. What you sent me, you changed the...
I did, yes.
Okay, so I was reading it. I'm like, you're messing up. But then never mind. You got it. You brought it back. You're the professional here. I'm just the assistant.
This is what happens behind the scenes, working with partners and stuff like that. The ad reads change.
I just show up on game day and play. That's my job.
What did you say before we started recording? Shut up and talk, football boy?
Yeah, that's what they say on like the TikTok videos. Like Morgan Wallen posted a new sample of a song, and like the funny joke is like chop chop music boy. So like that's mine. I'm football guy. Like just show up and talk football and go home.
Chop chop talk football boy.
Exactly.
There we go. Alrighty, we have a question from Ron from Lower Alabama, who said, now that it's Miller time as QB1, will we see similar plays as we saw in the bowl game?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I really believe now. That was a recipe for Louisville. It's going to depend on who we're playing each week, right? Lincoln's going to game plan around what Miller does well, absolutely. And we're going to probably see not a lot of those same plays, but some of variations of those concepts that we saw in the bowl game. But overall, you're game planning for an opponent. Now, you do your trick type plays, your gadget type plays, or your unique plays, as we call them, that you can use no matter who you're going against. But overall, your game plan is going to go against what your opponent does, right? If you have a ton of cover 3 plays that you like to run one week and you're going against a 2-high team that plays quarters or cover 2 or cover 6 the entire game, you're going to take out those 1-high beaters or those cover 3 beaters and put more of your 2-high beaters in. So again, game plan will change week to week depending on your defensive scheme you're going against, but you're absolutely, Lincoln's going to lean on, hey, Miller, throughout the week, what do you like on this? Between this and this, what do you like better? Hey, we ran this against Louisville. We can run a variation of that this week or going against LSU. What do you like better? So they're going to work with each other on that. But yeah, overall, you stick to what, or you game plan for your opponent rather than for who your quarterback is.
We got a question from Fighting On MC who said, Cody, Joel Klatt stated that USC's defense will be better just by lining up properly. How would you describe better? Obviously, a jokey joke from Mr. Klatt.
That's a big thing. And shout out Sua, who also signed on for another year with the Trojan Tailgate. He had a breakdown episode about this to where I think it was the Cal game, when we gave up, I think, over 300 rushing yards to Jay Knott in the first half, or 250. 6 of those explosive runs, or 5 of the 6 of those explosive runs, were because we weren't lined up. So I know Joel's taking a little shot there and making a joke, but it is true. There were times last year, and Fighting On MC obviously saw it too, there were times last year where we struggled to just do the simple thing of identifying strength, knowing whether it's base offense or if it's 12 personnel or 22 or if it's 3 wides, whatever it may be, and just lining up correctly, right? There were times we're looking at the sideline, still making calls and the ball snapped, and you have no chance to win, especially now going to the Big Ten, taking that next step. You have no chance to win if you can't line up right. So obviously, I don't see that being a factor this year. We're going to be able to, and that's what the thing with Dan Lynn that we talked about. I don't care how slow I have to go, right? He mentioned I'll spend 3 days on day one install if that's what it takes. I'm going to make sure you know what you're doing and everyone's on the same page every single play call in a game. And I love that he breaks it down like that. He's a true player's coach. But yes, I don't think that's going to be an issue this year. And I think we're going to have a huge advantage schematically, like I said, because of how well Lynn did against us. And I hate to admit it, but he did a great job. One of the very few times that someone has really forced our offense under Lincoln Riley to struggle and not have a lot of answers, especially on third downs. He did a phenomenal job on third down, especially in the red zone. And we struggled last year. Now I'm just happy he's on our side. And now not only Lincoln, who's a genius offensive play caller, has him as our defensive coordinator, he can also go pick from his brain a little bit.
Yeah.
And hey, would you see self-scout a little bit? So
yeah, great point.
I think the sky's the limit for both sides, and having someone like Danton Lynn on your staff not only makes your defense better, but makes your team better overall.
Well, you mentioned when Lynn was at UCLA and how we previewed that game. One of the words you said many times was that the defense was funky. Funky. And Sacramento Pete has obviously listened to this show for a while now. He says, has the defense become funky?
Yeah. I'm guessing that's a rhetorical question.
Maybe.
Yes,
you never
Pete.
know.
Yes, Pete, they are funky.
You got to confirm the funk.
Yeah, they are funky. I mean,
how about you tell us
I'll
next
say
Saturday,
this.
Sunday?
Sunday. Preview or the post episode we will, because going off of the spring game was vanilla, right? You're not going to see his third down winners on now. Go back and watch the UCLA game when we played, last year. You can watch some of those third down winners. You'll see. I'm serious. Go back and watch. And I think it was Latu or one of the other, maybe Murphy, one of the defensive ends who was in a 4-point stance on third down, literally squatted. And when I mean 2-point stance is both feet, 3-point offensive line stance, right, with one in the ground. It was a defensive end who's normally stand up and a 4-point stance head up over Justin Dedich. It's just unprecedented, and it makes it, you may think, like, what's the advantage with that? It is a nightmare for a quarterback to identify a defensive front or identify Mike calls. What I mean by that is a Mike linebacker normally sets where your calls are on an offense, right? So you walk up and go, hey, Mike's 54, here we go, ready, set, whatever. When you have 11 out here and then 15 over here, and now 18's head up on the center.
You're spending time just trying to identify.
And Mason Cobb at 13's out wide. Hey, who's the Mike? The O-line's turning around looking, hey, we've got to make our calls off your identification. It just makes it a nightmare. It makes it funky. So, and it takes me back to playing the Baltimore Ravens when I was in Cleveland. This is kind of where this whole defense stems from. Hated it. I hated Baltimore prep week because it was a nightmare. You had to really lock in that week to know whether it was, first of all, whether it was a 3-down front or a 4-down front. Was it a defensive end or a 3-tech pushed out wide? Was it a linebacker or an interior defensive lineman now off the ball? And it made it an absolute nightmare. And I'm so happy now that we have that here at USC. And yes, it's going to be funky, but I'll give you a little bit more of a breakdown, Pete, after that first game when he's really going to show his DNA against another opponent. Yeah, also, speaking of funky, the schedule is going to be funky for the first 2 weeks because of that Sunday game. So a heads up going forward. Obviously, the game will be on Sunday. We will have a recap pod on Monday. We will also have Trojans Live on Monday. I will try my best to get that recap podcast up ASAP on Monday. But again, I will be on Trojans Live. So lots of things to juggle. Chop, podcast lady. For real, though. Right back at you. And then we have practice on Tuesday, Wednesday, blah, blah. And then there's the game on Saturday. Yeah, so it's going to be fun. Doesn't stop for anyone. We will be sleep deprived and delirious by week 2. It'll be perfect. Is you're going to have your USC Trojan football, both media and playing, fixed for the week. I guarantee. Sure. I promise. Sure. We also have 2 bye weeks, though. So that's. I know. I think week 3 right away we have a bye week. After Michigan, yeah. Which will be. Is it after Michigan or before? It's after Michigan. Why do I want to say before Michigan? I think we go LSU, Utah State bye week. I should just open up my calendar. Yeah, there you go. Which is good though, and I think it is because I think. You are correct. Previously, we've talked about. We have a bye week way faster than I thought. I'm way more happy now. Yeah. Sorry. But that also gives us 2 weeks to prepare to go to the Big House and play Michigan. So I thought you meant us. I was like, yes, this will be the best preview podcast ever against Michigan. Okay, next question. Sorry. You're like, shut up, Keely. You're not funny. No, I need to go back to our questions. We had a question from Jessica who said, is the defense ready for the Big Ten? What defensive players do you think will make the most impact in our new conference? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why you go get a guy like D'Anton Lynn, because you know you're going to the Big Ten and you know the type of physicality and defense that you need to win games and win championships in the Big Ten. And we did just that, right? D'Anton Lynn had a top 10 defense from a year ago. The year before, too, people forget, and this was a number I didn't bring up last week, UCLA finished top 10 in total defense a year ago. And Lynn's first season, the year before that in 2022, they finished 87th. So it was a dramatic change from where they were a year prior. And the biggest stat for me that tells me we're going to be successful in the Big Ten is that D'Anton Lynn had the number 2 ranked run defense a year ago at UCLA as well. That is a huge confidence boost going into the Big Ten. There's times when you watched last year, I think I mentioned Penn State or Michigan playing each other. I don't think Penn State, or it might have been Michigan, didn't run the ball or didn't throw the ball the entire second half. Just leaned on the run game.
Right.
You're going to see big physical offensive fronts. You're going to see big physical running backs. You're going to see shifty backs as well. You've got to be able to stop the run in the Big Ten, and that's something that we're going to be able to do with Lynn as defensive coordinator. And when it comes to players, I think some of the guys I've already mentioned. Defensively, Kamari Ramsey, I think, still is the most important player on this defense. I'm excited for Jacoby Covington at corner, Jalen Smith as well. And then Easton Mascarenas-Arnold, I think, is going to have to play a huge role along with Pepe and Bear Alexander in the middle.
Yeah, for sure. Eddie said, given Bear's size, do you see him more as a 0 tech or more as a 1 tech in Coach Lynn's defense?
Well, I mean, I think he's going to play both. And what I think they mean by that question is like a 0 technique. For those who don't know, 0 technique is head up on the center, and then a 1 technique is shaded either to the right or left of the center. So very small difference, but normally you see a 0 tech and a 3-4 defensive front. I think we're going to do both. That's obviously a base down front. Nickel front, you're going to see more of a 4 down front. So you don't as much see a head up 0 technique and 4 down fronts. But to answer that question, I think he's going to be in there for both. I think he's going to be in there for a 3 technique and play that head up position as a 0. And then when we go 4-3 and bring in another defensive end or another 3 technique, I think he's going to be that 0, that 1 shade as well. So I expect him to play a good amount. Now, the only thing that may change is on 3rd and long passing situations. Maybe a guy that runs off the field so we can get an extra pass rusher in there. But, yeah, I think Bear's going to be used both in base defense and nickel defense as either a 0 or a 1.
We got a couple questions specifically about USC versus LSU presented by Invesco QQQ. SoCal Maney said, do you expect the coaches to rotate a lot of players in the first game or stick with the starters? And we talked about this last week, I believe. It's an interesting predicament because usually you start off with not as equal talent, if you will, for the first game.
Lesser opponent is, I think, the way we've said it.
Yeah, I just didn't want to be offensive. That's all. But you're going up against a top 10, top 15 opponent in LSU. You have less leeway there.
Yeah, Manny. I that's kind of what Keely's saying is last year when we started off with San Jose State, who's a lesser opponent, the year before against Rice, you knew that you can kind of get that lead. Or once you got that lead, saying everything goes right, there's been some big upsets before, but once you get that lead, you felt more comfortable keeping it so you could get to the 2nd, 3rd, and even sometimes 4th string, especially with the redshirt rule where you can play 4 games. When you're playing an opponent like LSU and it's a nationally televised, mutual site, kickoff of college football, everyone in the country is going to be watching on a Sunday, I don't know how much we're going to see Lincoln reach into the depth chart on both sides of the football. I expect it to be, hey, these are our guys. These are our rotational guys. This is not the time to see what the freshmen can do. This is not the time to see what the 3rd string guys can do unless it's needed, right? If there's times where guys aren't getting the job done, absolutely you can be benched in the first game. Absolutely you can get replaced for someone who was competing with you in the fall camp and was very close in the race, and then you get replaced because you're not performing on a Sunday or a Saturday. I absolutely think that'll happen, but the following week, and again, I don't want to treat it as a trap game or anything, but when we play Utah State, who's a lesser opponent of LSU, that's when I would expect to see, or if we started with Utah State, that's when I would expect to see some of those younger guys that you still have a lot of question marks about that you can put in the game and learn some, but this is not the week to do it. This is LSU week. This is an SEC opponent. It's nationally televised. Everyone's going to be watching. This is where you put your starters out there, your rotational guys, and you go out and win the football game, and then you can learn more about your team as the season goes on.
Now, I don't necessarily know if we want to answer this question. We might want to save it for next week, but AOP4223 said, final score prediction for the LSU game. Love the show. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. We've got to say that. Just so you know, AO2, we do AOP or
AOP?
AOP, we do score. Now we'll get to do it, too, like immediately after.
True.
But we do score predictions on our preview episode throughout the season, and we keep a tally.
Spoiler alert, I win every time.
Yeah, she's won the last 2 years. So, but we do a score prediction. And then I'm going to do this year, though.
What?
Because, you know what? No, maybe not. We'll be fine.
What?
Well, I would always say first. I would
Fine.
I would look in and go, okay, let me get the research. Let me do all this. And then you go.
2 years in a row, I've gotten the exact score. So if you want to change things around, you can.
Would you get Rice the first year and then, or who was last year?
I don't know what I did, but
Nevada. You got Nevada, I think, perfectly last year too. Like spot on. This year, Emily, our producers over there, we're going to text our scores to Emily before we sit down so it's locked in.
I do not change. Like literally, I forget that we do the score predictions.
I know, because then I read my score. I'll be like 56-42.
You think
and then you
I'm
go, all right, 58 to 45.
You?
Check the tape.
Oh,
all I'm going to say,
gosh.
check the tape.
No.
I'm too competitive.
And you lose.
You see, look, now there's a little more. AOP, you got us going. Thanks, man. But now we've got a little more incentive now this year. Let's bet on it.
I had all the incentive, Mr. Competitive.
Loser has to edit the pod that week.
So I'm always the loser, is what you're saying.
I'm edit.
I already knew that. Don't worry.
But yeah, to answer that question, we do every preview episode. We'll do a score prediction and then we keep tallies. So we'll get to that next week. I've got to watch a little more LSU film before I feel comfortable.
Okay.
Giving a prediction though.
Okay. Not that it will matter, but okay. Just kidding. Right. We got a question from Steven who said, are there any other position battles we should be focused on now that the quarterback position is solidified? Yeah,
I think the final ones are going to be corner.
Yeah.
Who the corners are going to be. Right guard. Maybe outside of that, but I think outside of that is pretty set. But I'd say corner, right guard, linebacker, rotation.
The defense.
Yeah, the defense, I guess. But I mean, I feel pretty comfortable with who the key guys are going to be, and I feel like we kind of touched on that throughout this episode. It's just what rotation are we going to see? What A, Bs, and Cs, as Doug Belk says, are we going to see at the same time in the secondary or at linebacker? But yeah, I mean, I two ones that I'm keying on are right guard and cornerback position are probably the most important for me right now.
I'm going to ask you this when we talk about the DBs. Who do you expect at nickel? That's something where I was just like, Jalen Smith is nickel.
Yeah, he's been that guy the last couple of years. So if he doesn't play outside or if he doesn't play at safety, even, and we'll probably see guys at different spots, but to start off the game or to start off, hey, this is our nickel going into season, Prophet Brown is a guy that started in the spring. I think you can argue Jalen Smith may go back there as well. If we're playing a bigger opponent that week, I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe DeCarlos Nicholson or John Humphrey, a bigger type guy that can move around, playing that spot as well. But if I had to bet right now and say who it is, outside of the corners that we've talked to, it's still tough for me to not say Jalen. But Prophet started in the spring, and he's been playing solid. So, I mean, I think it's his job to lose. But we'll see. Either way, I think the nickel spot's going to rotate a lot, especially playing in the Big Ten when you have those big type of tight ends week in and week out.
We have some fun questions. And I know I promised that we would get to the questions you had from last week, this week. So do you want to go to them now?
Yeah. Let me do mine.
Yeah. And then we can wrap it up with some fun questions.
Okay. Let me go back. Okay, here they are. All right. So what we used to do is the Cody 2-minute, 4-minute, 6-minute, 8-minute.
Yeah.
It was a 2-minute drill to where I'd rapid fire Instagram questions. Then I started getting like 30 of them.
Yes.
And I can't just like one word.
I
couldn't. Yeah, there you go. One word answers. So they got skipped. I'm probably not going to do as much Instagram questions this year. I'll probably just.
You literally told me you weren't. So.
Yeah, and I did it, and then we ran out of time last week.
So classic.
All right. Anyways, I'm cutting into my time.
Yes.
Get my timer going.
Oh my gosh, I will time you.
No, we used to do that, but these are the questions from last week that I reached out to everyone and promised I would answer them this week. So I'm going to try to rapid fire. If we've already answered it,
5 minutes starting now.
5? Oh, I easily. All right, here we go. First one is from John Thornton 949. Didich struggled with the switch to center last year. Will Jonah experience the same? I don't think Didich struggled necessarily. I just think it's always difficult early on when you make that switch from a different position, whether it's playing X to Z can be tough at times. So there's going to be some growing pains, but I felt very comfortable, especially as he got more reps throughout the year with Justin Didich. I feel the same about Jonah Monheim. I think there's going to be a couple growing pains early on, but overall I feel completely comfortable with him. Same thing happened when I was here with Max Turk, with Marcus Martin. He played guard, moved to center, so that's a very common thing to happen. It's just how long is it going to take for Jonah to fully feel comfortable at that spot? Only time will tell. The next one is from Crash Lit, who said...
Crash.
Yeah, Crash. He said, thoughts on the QB battle between Moss and Maeva?
That has been decided. Sorry for not answering last week.
I did tell him, though. I reached out and said, hey, we got pretty in-depth on this last week. If you want to go watch. He said, absolutely. The next one's from Josh Harden. Which position group are you most excited to watch show up and show out this season? I'm going to go, as a quarterback, wide receivers. Yeah, as the easy one. But for me, as a now media standpoint and for this team and the importance of it, again, cornerback position. I think that just needs to be solidified this year. We need to be able to play man-to-man the outside and let the interior 7 get after the quarterback and stop the run game. The next one is from No Cheese. How will the team prepare to play in cold games and loud crowds? Their fans are different. Again, it's tough to mimic the cold. And we've talked about this last year, but a little trick that I learned from Matt Barkley, for a quarterback at least, and I can't speak for everyone else, is someone would bring a bag of ice to practice. And I think I've told this story before. In between plays or in between reps, I would stick my hand in the bag of ice.
I don't think you've told this story.
Have I not? Okay, so I learned this from Matt. I'll be real quick. Stop my timer. I learned this from Matt, and we would play in practice, and we're going against Oregon that week in late November. We're going against, Colorado, and it's going to be 20 degrees. We would mimic. Now, as a quarterback, it wasn't tough. I'm not speaking for everyone else, but keep my legs loose, keeping everything else loose. It was just the cold hands, right? And you had the hand warmers, but majority of the time your hands are out, right? You can't just sit there with your hand in the hand warmer. So we would mimic that by literally one of the trainers would walk around and follow me the entire practice, routes on air, EDDs, which is everyday drills, 7-on-7, team period, scout period, all of that. He would follow me around, and in between every play, I would literally be sitting there. And it was funny with Sark, too, because we would go hurry up or no huddle, and we'd call play, and then he'd run.
Dunking your hands?
Yeah, he would run over and bring the ice bag, and I'd just stick it in there for like 5-10 seconds, wait for it, and then I'm like, all right, you're good, thank you. Pull it out, my hand's cold, and then we'd snap the ball, so I get used to having a cold hand. So as a quarterback, that's the only thing I can speak on, is that's a way to be able to do it, but outside of that, that's going to be tough. And that's something that we're fortunate this year. I don't think we go to a cold game or to the Midwest, I think, after October.
Yes.
Maybe. So we're not going to have that big of a difference. We have to experience that too much, and then we stay out west the rest of the year. So that's going to be interesting going forward. The next one is from Alyssa Huzinga. Will you be at USC Michigan? I unfortunately will not, but...
Really? You should go.
I would love to, but I don't know if I'll be able to make that. Well, I'm doing, again, pregame shows in studio. I'm sure they wouldn't mind if I went and did it in person. That would be sweet too. Yeah. And another name pull from last week when I did the DirecTV thing with Barry Sanders.
Come on.
Barry and his agent were like, "Hey, you want to come to Detroit, or you come to a game at Michigan? Let me know. You can come sit with us." So
you said you were going to go last year.
We'll see. Alyssa, TBD. I know Keely will be there.
I will.
I will not.
I'm excited.
Probably not. Rick 1380. Do you still come back to Bakersfield? Not really, Rick. Unfortunately, I think we've been back, my wife and I, like once in the last year, maybe twice.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's just hot down there. And I work down here. Everything I do is in Irvine in Southern California, so I stay down here. And then next one's from Brian Figueroa. What do you think is considered a successful season in 2024?
Great question.
Last week, I'm going to stick with this just to keep it simple. I said 10 wins. I think is very doable, and I think that's still the answer I'm going to stick with now. I said I'll change that if I need to once we see the first couple games, which is cheating. But anyway, the next one is from Reg Bindenheim. How stark is the contrast between spring and fall camp, intensity, violence, etc.?
Violence.
It is, well, I think with the pads on and hitting and everything. So
crazy word.
It is night and day. It really is. Spring is like, spring practices, you practice 3 times a week, but after practice, you're done, right? You have film and weight room. I think you go film like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, spring practice, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday's off. And it's pretty much that's it, right? You're doing the film and practice and meetings, and you're done. Fall camp is the complete opposite. Yeah. You are living, breathing, eating, sleeping football, especially the beginning of camp, for about 3 weeks. Yeah. And it's doesn't even matter what day it is anymore. Like you would wake up and be like, all right, I'm up at 5:30, weightlift, breakfast, maybe a little couple minute break, then meetings, then walkthrough, then more meetings, then practice, then post-practice meetings, and then dinner, and then bed check right after that. And I'm like, oh, it was Saturday today. But really, it was just another fall camp day, you know? So
no, I get you.
As much as weight room in the off-season teaches you about how much you love football, fall camp is really, and when I got to college, because you don't experience it in high school, to an extent. Yeah. When I got to college, my first year of fall camp was when I really learned, do I love football this much or do I not? Yeah. And luckily the answer was yes. But yeah, it's night and day. It is really a huge difference. All right, the next one I got. 2 more. The next one is from Timson Cameron. He said, buy or sell. This year's schedule is harder than last year's schedule.
He said this year's schedule is harder?
Yeah, buy or sell. Yes or no?
I'm going to pull a Cody and say, can we wait to answer this? Just because I think it's underrated USC schedule last year. Which I think is the point he's trying to make. I'm going to say, no, well, I'm going to say. The Pack. The last season of the Pack was pretty strong.
Yeah, I'm torn. This is a good question, Cameron. I'm going to say, and he asks questions all the time. He stumped me. I'm going to go with, and the funny part is I read this like 2 weeks ago, so I've had 2 weeks to answer it, and I forgot about it. Well, my first thought was buy because it's the first year of the Big Ten, but those last 6 games that we played a year ago was the toughest, even when I was here, that I can remember in recent history of a USC football team going against back to back to back. I mean, I think all 6 were ranked, or all 5 were ranked. And then you say, oh, Arizona was the one right before that, week 6, who ended up finishing in the top 10, and I think they won a pretty big bowl game against Oklahoma. I mean, they were a very good team. So you could even argue the last 7 games, outside of Cal, which went to the wire.
And then Arizona was double overtime, Oregon, I believe. So that's like
so it was Arizona,
a whole different...
Oregon, Notre Dame, Washington, UCLA. Like, it was a very tough second half of the schedule. So I'm gonna go sell. I think last year was a tougher schedule. I think we have tougher opponents this year. Going into the Big Ten, the Penn State game we've never seen before. We've never played them in recent history with Lincoln. Michigan, going to be insanely tough. Nebraska, Wisconsin. And then obviously we go play Washington again and Notre Dame. So those are tough games. But to have those 6 back-to-back, I think you didn't get a break. There was no breather. And we went 9 straight weeks from our bye. So it was
brutal.
I'm going to go sell on that. The short answer, sell. Those are my reasoning. I think last year's schedule was more difficult as a whole. And then the last one is from, oh no, that's it. My mom asked, it was a question from Trojan Mamo 6, but you asked the trap game question that we asked last week.
Right.
So.
And it was her birthday.
I'm done. 5 minutes.
Okay.
What was it? 3 minutes? 2 minutes?
No, you went over, but that's fine. We have 3 more questions. One's from Jake, who said, Cody, if you were playing now and there was a situation where you could go have an alternate uniform, what would it be? Old school unis or spice it up by doing a little something not traditional? Just curious.
Oh, I think some throwback SC
I love me a good throwback.
Would be so sick if we actually pulled that off. Like a modernized version of a throwback would be insane. I'm saying obviously not the materials the same. And
I'm just being annoying.
The wear and tear jersey, but to have the same color scheme.
Oh yeah.
And style and design, but with newer material and all that, and the tighter fitting jerseys would be no doubt my answer. Now, the opposite side of that though, I've always been a fan of the All Blacks. I think All Blacks would be cool if we ever pulled it off. But if I had to pick between those two, or all whites. Would be cool. I think would be insane with Cardinal and Gold. But between those two, I'm going modernized throwback, the same design and everything. Oh, hands down.
We were actually pulling footage the other day, like old USC football footage. And I was a big fan of the diamonds print in the end zone.
That's
Argyle
throwback.
I thought it was cool.
Argyle?
Do you know?
No. Don't even know. Is that another word for diamond?
It's a print that involves a diamond. Okay. I don't know if that was the exact
moving on
throwback. Okay, sounds great.
I have no idea what that means, but yes, no. I do remember the diamond scheme. That was throwback.
Yeah, bring it back.
You know how cool that would be though. Real quick before we move on, I love that question. But if we went full on throwback jerseys, throwback collie, like the paint and all that. Oh.
I know. I would love that.
Yeah.
Also, we have footage.
Do it for a homecoming game.
I know. Speaking of homecoming, we have random footage from 1927 of USC's homecoming game.
There you go.
People, like old cars coming out of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And I'm like, technology is wild.
Yeah.
It's crazy. 2 more statements/questions. Louis said, huge fan from upstate New York. Thank you, Louis. Just bought tickets to see the SC Maryland game in October.
Let's go.
Fun.
Yeah.
If you're there, track me down.
Yeah, Keely,
wave to me. I'm
Keely
on the sideline.
goes to every away game, so.
Yeah, and I love waving to people who scream at me. Not scream at me, but try and get my attention. Anyway, last question.
I was saying, you open yourself up to some... Yeah, scream at Keely when you get there.
Don't scream at me. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
Last question/comment is from No Cheese, who said, off topic, but have you played College Football 25? In honor of Cody, my QB was number 6.
Let's go. I have not. I am not a big video game... Yeah, I'm not a video game guy at all. But I know that some of the... Sua brought this up too about like we should stream it and make it informative. Like this is what like when I'll play we'll play together, but on offense I'll explain like what your read is and what you're going through. Make it funny too.
Okay.
Just like kind of us playing on there, going against each other, or playing. You can go like 2 or 3 or 4. I think 4 people on a team at a time or something like that. So we thought about that, or Sua brought it up, and I was like, yeah, that'd be pretty funny. But yeah, I'm just not. I was terrible at Madden.
Which is hilarious. Given your real life capability.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say terrible. Offense, I was fine. Quarterback reads, I was fine. I was
so funny.
Just it's something like my hand-eye coordination is great. It's just control. Like I just wasn't good at the controlling aspect of it. You know,
so funny. You're like I'm good at this sport.
Yeah,
just not the.
I can't do the video game version.
Yeah,
but
that makes sense.
It was I do not play 25. I saw that. Liner, I think, streams it now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he does. He does a
He's
little cool.
He's such a social media guy these days.
He always, every time I see him, I always give him a hard time about his TikToks. He's like, bro, got to get on him, dude. You're doing media now. Get on the TikToks. So
he's not wrong.
He's tried to talk me into him a couple times. And then when we did the DirecTV thing too, he was, let's film a couple TikToks. I'm like, he was doing it though. He goes all out.
I'm telling you.
He's got I think a PR person that helps him and his wife as well, Josie. They do a lot of the couple TikTok stuff.
I think they just announced that they're pregnant too. So congrats to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're having their third kid together. So, and then Cole, his son, is crazy. I think he's a junior now in high school. I remember when I was playing and Matt would come to the game because we were 10 years apart exactly. Cole would
same
come
birthday,
around,
right?
Yeah, same birthday. Yeah, exactly. May 11th, just 10 years apart. But Cole would come run around and stuff. But yeah, shout out Matt if you want to go watch a former SC quarterback play College Football 25. I think he streams it, so I'll give him a little shout out there on his Twitch account. But no, I am not a gamer and I'm terrible at it, so you probably will not see me playing that anytime soon.
Sounds good. My boyfriend plays it and I watch, but honestly, it's a little like when I'm home, it feels like work because like he plays as USC, and I'm like.
And you get flashbacks of like watching film
it's a little
and editing,
bit like
editing
a
tape.
little bit too much. Yeah. So that's where I'm kind of like, you know what? Maybe pick another team or something else.
I'll tell you what though, I will play. I got I think PGA 2021. So I played some of the golf games.
Always come back.
Yeah, I'm golf is
man.
my go. I don't want to say I'm not a gamer at all because I will play a couple, but yeah, no, I don't have the time to get good at a game, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay. But we appreciate that.
Maybe let's bring it in. Yeah, exactly. I'm too busy doing podcast breakdowns in preparation for the show,
study.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of, we will be back next week with our official preview podcast, the first game of the 2024 season. It's here. I know we always talk about it every offseason. It comes by so quickly, but we are here. The preseason is over. Next week, time to get into USC's first opponent. Very excited. Any final thoughts, Cody, before we wrap this up?
Before that, I'm doing a little promo here. Jordan, you guys are welcome. Before you watch the podcast, watch Trojans Live on Monday. At 4 p.m., I think?
Yes.
This is live.
It'll be live on YouTube at 4 p.m. You can also catch us on ESPN LA, I believe, from 5 to 6.
So a little shout out for that, too. Watch it with me, Jordan, Sean, Cody, Keely, and then Lincoln comes on, a couple players, and then I don't know who the coaches are or the players from other sports teams, but it's an awesome little thing. They used to do it when I was here. Jordan and JJ.
They've been doing it for a while.
Jordan and JJ, I remember being interviewed, and now I'm full circle the one doing the interviews. But yeah, again, you're going to see a lot of me and Keely this year, and very excited to be signed on with USC football. Love you guys. You guys made this possible. I just so thankful for all the positive feedback and you guys loving the show, and that's a big reason why I got to continue to do this. So very excited doing Trojan Tailgate, Trojans Live podcast. Woo! Doing it all. So I'm done. With that being said, fight on. Love you guys. Next time you see us, we're getting ready for LSU.
Very excited. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week. Like we said, that's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.